everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres.
Hi. Interesting week we have in front of us.
Mikhail Mendani.
Hello.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
And Chowmin Wu.
How's it going?
So we are recording this episode on September 27th. We are basically partway through TGS. The reason why James is not on the podcast is because he's over in Japan covering TGS. So as we speak into the microphone now, we have 2.5 days of news out of TGS. A few announcements. One big announcement. I guess we kind of teased it up last week because it basically leaked. Some updates for some trailers, some new gameplay footage for some previously announced games. No giant megatons coming out of TGS, though I think it'll be fun to have James come back next week to talk about his experience over there, as well as, you know, who else he got to meet over there from other outlets and things like that. Of course, here, all of us on, holding home ground here, we'll talk about the trailers that we got. We have a couple releases in the back half of September that we're going to be talking about. The first one, obviously, is going to be Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, the remaster of Final Fantasy Tactics. And then we also have the 1.0 release of Hades 2. That's also this week. So both of those reviews are up on the site, and those are going to be the main two games for our first section of this podcast. Then we'll go into the TGS announcements and those news and everything like that. So, Josh, I know that you and people like Mikhail and Kite have been following TGS very closely. I've just been catching the summaries as they get posted up on the site. So yeah, it's been an interesting week, as TGS week always is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where there definitely were some new announcements that were like interesting and cool, and we're gonna get to it, especially like with the Yakuza Like a Dragon stuff, with their whole direct summit, then direct, and we'll get into that when the news is. But that's like kind of the bulk of it. There are definitely some things here and there, especially from the Sony State of Play that happened. But overall, just the actual event itself and I haven't really watched a lot of like the streams or really any of the events, which in previous years I was more on board with it, but this year it's like I looked at the schedule, I'm like nothing is really catching my eye or exciting to me, and a lot of the teaser reveals were just kind of junk. Um, it's really a really awkward Tokyo Game Show week, especially when like we're also gonna get into this too, where Nintendo, along with I forgot the other company, like shadow dropped like a new Fire Emblem on mobile, and we'll get into that. I think it is the Intelligent Systems at DENA, which are the same ones who did Fire Emblem Heroes. And just what a bizarre week, man. I don't know how to process it still.
Yeah, and it's not over. So obviously there'll still be late Saturday and Sunday announcements, of course. With considering for the time zone differences, I did download the Fire Emblem game on mobile, but I played Heroes for like 2 hours and hated it. So I have no idea how much I'll put into FE Shadows. So we'll see if we get that game more coverage on the site. Do you know anyone that's really put a lot of time into it? I haven't seen a lot of interest in it.
All my friends, all their friends and friends of friends that I've heard anything about this game, and even like acquaintances I know, like through social media and whatnot, I think they all uninstalled it within the first hour, and it's. I don't know if you want to wait for news or not on like on their experiences, but let's say this game on a conceptual philosophical game design basis is massively flawed, because one of the main mechanics of it is there are some RPG-esque elements to it, but a big element to it is like this social deduction, aka Among Us werewolf-esque system, but it's only with 3 people involved in that process. And when you think about like, does Among Us or werewolf work with 3 people only? And you think about that for a little, it's like, wow, that doesn't work at all. That's stupid. No. And it's like, okay, then what are we doing here? So, fascinating release. Yeah.
So we won't be covering that in detail, obviously, this week, but I'm interested in maybe kind of earmarking it for like a mid-level conversation in the future. Maybe I'll force myself before bed to just poke at it a little bit, just to experience firsthand. But anyways, without further ado, obviously the big release coming up at the time of recording, it's not released, but the embargo is up. Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. So we got a review up on the site from Scott White, who really enjoyed it a lot. He was returning to the game and basically had a bunch of good things to say about it. For this podcast, though, Adam also had access to Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. I know you've been putting a lot of time into this game over the last week. So, Adam, you're going to take the floor first to talk about Ivalice Chronicles. Now, I believe you played the War of the Lions PSP version, as that was the first time you played Tactics.
Yeah, I never played the original, so I played War of the Lions, and I liked the game a lot. When it comes down to it, I actually am a bigger fan of Tactics Ogre. There are just differences in that game. There's some similarities, some differences, obviously. But Tactics Ogre, I just think it leans in a certain way that I think is just the kind of the way I prefer. But if I were to pick a game that I think is like more of a must play in a sense, it's Tactics. I think just the influence that Final Fantasy Tactics has had on the genre, and the things that we kind of take almost for granted as like a genre staple or like a genre convention in tactical RPGs probably has some roots in Final Fantasy Tactics. And so the fact that Square Enix is finally releasing this game on modern platforms, I think is very smart, making it much more accessible to a wider audience, to who have either people who have played it before, want to revisit it, or people who have never played it. Like, for example, I know James has never played it, and he was curious to check this version out. It's accessible to him versus digging out a PlayStation 1 or a PSP. So this game is they're a little bit wishy-washy on what do you call it, like a remaster or a new version or whatever. I think remaster is a well enough label to slap on it. But when you load up the game, there are actually two different versions you can pick in Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. So it's like at the front menu, you can either pick the Ivalice Chronicles version, which is like the new version, or you can pick the classic version. Now, the classic version is like not quite classic because it's not exactly the PlayStation 1 version of Final Fantasy Tactics. What it is it looks like the PlayStation 1 version, and there's no voice acting and things like that, but it has like the War of the Lions script. So if you are a true Final Fantasy Tactics PlayStation 1 purist, unfortunately, you still have to go back to the PlayStation 1 to play that version, because that's not here as it is, exactly. I played the Ivalice Chronicles version, so that's the version that has like slightly altered art style. It has the War of the Lions script, but tweaked a little bit. It has all the voice acting, a bunch of quality of life features, and things like that.
The classic mode is a bit confusing to me because, like you said, it's a mode which they tried to release to maybe appeal to purists, but it doesn't have the PS1 script for some reason, while I believe the Japanese version has the PS1 script for the classic mode, but it's just for the English one they use War of the Lions for the classic mode. But the reason I'm confused why this mode even exists is, like, I like how the pixel art looks, and even though it's 4:3 or like not widescreen, it looks fine and like on everything I've played it on, but you don't have the speed up options, which kind of defeats the purpose of playing this. Like, I just don't see any value in touching this. If I wanted to play that, I literally have my Vita with the PS1 version installed. I would just, like, I know 99% of the people who play this one will not own a Vita or will not care about getting that out, but it just seems like a confusing addition to like say that, oh, you have the classic version. I think if they really wanted to, like, make some use out of the classic pixel art style which they have, I would have preferred a visual toggle for Ivalice Chronicles. Like, how, I don't know if you've played this Wonder Boy, the Dragon Strap, they have like you can use the shoulder buttons to just toggle between the classic retro and the new like hand-drawn Lizard's Cube art. Like anytime while you're playing it, I would have preferred, all that dev time go into that if it was feasible to like give people like proper crisp pixel art without having touched up sprites but scaled up correctly. That's kind of how War of the Lions looks if you play it on like, I guess maybe it is on Android, like how it plays on Android. I only have it on iOS, but on iPhone and iPad you're still getting like crisp pixel art on high resolution screen. So like I know people who aren't buying this collection because they don't like how the Ivalice Chronicles look. So it feels like I don't want to say it's a waste of resources because I know some people who are excited to play the classic version, but to me I just don't see why I would ever play the classic mode when the whole draw of this is to play the Ivalice Chronicles with all the new additions and stuff, because I have had access to the old versions for so long already. So
I 100% agree with you. And this was basically, let's just start out with the negatives. We'll get to the positives in a second.
Sure.
And this is basically the reason why Scott didn't give it a 10, I think. Like, he loves this game, but he's just like, and I agree with you completely that this kind of toggle setup at the beginning where you choose like two different versions is a little bit strange. Like, if you want to play the Ivalice Chronicles version with the voice acting and all the quality of life, you have to have like the new pixel art style, whether or not you're a fan of it. It's like, well, let's just play the classic version so you get the old fashioned, classic pixel art style. And it's like, well, now you don't have the voice acting or some of the quality of life. And so it's kind of a weird, like, pick your losses. I wish there was more like individual toggles you could pick and choose between versus just like these two different paths to take. And that was one of Scott's arguments too, was like the setup isn't perfectly ideal. I wish it was a little bit more, granular and toggleable, but it's not. And Brian, what do you want to say?
I just want to get one thing just like buttoned down, just to make sure. Once you make a choice, your like save file is locked to that choice. Is that how it is?
Yes, you can't like switch between them.
Okay.
No, they're like separate. They're like separate games almost. So
is classic mode just like a ROM of the PlayStation 1 version?
No. It tries to like recreate it, but like I said, it has the War of the Lion script, not only in the English version. I think the Japanese version has the Japanese PlayStation 1 script, like Mikhail mentioned. But it has like the more, classic pixel art style, and I didn't play that version because I'm reviewing the new version or whatever, but that is the setup of the game. So don't be surprised when if you were to get this game and boot it up, that's your first choice you have to make.
And to clarify, that classic version with the War of the Lion script, like there are script changes between both, and not in the sense of like what they're saying, but like in the new Ivalice Chronicles version, it's been rearranged so it fits like the VO better. So it comes out more naturally when they're speaking out the voiced lines, because the War of the Lions script wasn't made with voice acting in mind. So a lot of the descriptive text in that it could feel a bit drawn out when you're saying it out loud for voiced exchanges.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that. It's the new script. It seems I've seen a couple of different Final Fantasy Tactics heads digging through the script. The new script does look like it's based on the War of the Lions version, and there are chunks of it that are unchanged, but then there are chunks of it that are, where again, it seems like primarily in the service of voice acting. Like, okay, here's a line, it's voiced now, we're gonna make some slight changes to it for that purpose, for the voice. So it is a slightly different script, here and there. I really like the War of the Lion script. I really like the new script. And I do think this is a big takeaway. I do think the voice acting, for the most part, adds a lot. I do think just having these actors with proper intonation and voice inflection and things like that, reading through these lines, really helps to like portray, the atmosphere or the environment or the emotions at the time. And I do think a lot of the characters in this game are really elevated through the voice acting. Now, I don't love every single like voice performance in the game, which I think is probably inevitable. Whenever you have a game that was not voiced and now it is voiced, it's practically impossible that everyone's going to sound exactly as I envisioned in my perfect imagination, right? But still, I think it does a remarkable job with a lot of the characters, and even some characters that are kind of just not throwaway, but there are some like side characters that maybe only show up in 2 missions that are not really key characters. If you play through, the older versions like War of the Lions, they're just like, oh, this is just some side character and, a couple of missions that isn't really that important. But it really helps kind of give them a lot more personality and flavor. And I think just really broadens the world in a sense. Like, I almost forgot that one of the characters in the game is Wheatgrass's sister. Like, and I feel like her performance, Eluda, is really well done. And I just think kind of it's made her more memorable to me playing through this again. Like, oh, right, I remember, it kind of came back to me as I played it. Like, I remember how this all fits together now. And now, like, I can hear her in my head, right? So I think things like that really helps out with these minor characters.
I think your endorsement of the voice acting speaks volumes because from all the years that I've known you and spoke to you, like we usually carried like a similar wavelength when it comes to like adding voices to characters that were previously unvoiced. I think Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne HD Remastered is a really great example of like that's a game that we both really love, and we were both kind of iffy on the additional like the prospect of additional or adding voices to the HD Remastered version of that game because so much of like having the character silent added to the atmosphere and just tone of that game. And like the not to say that the voice acting was was bad or anything. Like I think it was perfectly fine from what I heard of it. But hearing you talk about like, hey, voice acting really does elevate us like a really celebrated story and plot line like Final Fantasy Tactics. Like it adds a lot to it to make it its impact and its memorability even higher, I think speaks a lot to me. I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, and I really
Well, I'm gonna
want to
bring
give
up
that a shot.
I'm gonna bring up another game that maybe I don't know if I want to open up this can of worms, but the I'm blanking on it. The Vanillaware game that just came out last
Unicorn
March.
Overload.
Unicorn
Yeah.
Overlord.
So in English, they kind of tried to go with a similarly sounding script. Like it felt like, and there was a lot of contention around that because that's not how it was written in the original. But then the localizers took that. They wanted to kind of give it that flavor, and I don't think it landed. And I like the voice; it didn't mesh for me. Like the voice acting, the delivery, the vibes. Like I know that's like not really got a latch on it. So I was like, oh, am I gonna have the same result if War of the Lion script for Final Fantasy Tactics starts getting voice acted? Is it gonna feel weird? So the fact that it doesn't, I think, is a good testament to like the care that they've done with modifying the script for the voice acting performance potentially.
Yeah, and when I was playing through Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, one particular voice kind of stuck out to me. And when I'm playing this in a vacuum, there are sometimes like almost like self-doubts that I have. It's like, is it just me who likes this voice? Or I wonder what other people think about this. And then I'm reading through Scott's review and he says the same thing. And I see it online and other people say the same thing. So it seems like he left a mark on a lot of people. And that is Argath, who is voiced by Ben Allen. If you don't remember Argath, he is like this kind of like low-ranking noble that you pick up early in the game, and then you learn really quickly that he is a little asshole. He is a
I
twerp.
wish you could leave him to die, but the game is over
Like-
and you left him to die.
Yeah, his voice performance does like a really good job in the sense that like I want to reach through my monitor and choke him. I want to kick him in the gut. Like, what a fucking jerk. Like, so he's a character you're supposed to hate if you're not familiar. And I think the voice performance does like a really kind of good job just making him very, very hateable and maybe a little bit theatrical, but I just think that voice performance did what it was supposed to and made Argath the type of character that he's meant to be portrayed as. And especially with some of the lines that he has, like Argath has in the game, again with the War of the Lion script, I think the voice performance, like you read it, if you read some of the lines he has just, without voices, he's like, wow, that's kind of an asshole thing to say. But then,
No, I always thought he was a scumbag.
no, I'm not saying he never. I'm not saying he always was. But like, I think the voice performance turns it from like, wow, this guy's an asshole, to like, I want to kill this guy. Like, I might insert something in the recording here, one of his lines that he has to actually Maluda relatively early in the game. So Maluda is kind of a commoner talking about how the nobles basically, get fat off of, their lifestyles, and everyone else is left to starve. And that Maluda says something like, "We are no less human than you." And then one of Argath's lines, I'm not gonna voice act it because I could not do anywhere close to justice, is, you no less human than we? Ha, now there's a beastly thought. You've been less than we from the moment your baseborn father fell upon your mother and whatever gutter saw you sired. And it's just kind of like, damn, dude, what the hell?
Holy.
While you wage your wars that you might grow fat, we are made to starve. You call us thieves, but it is you who steal from us the right to live.
You, no less human than we? Now there's a beastly thought. You've been less than we from the moment your baseborn father fell upon your mother in whatever gutter saw you sired.
It's easy to ham it up where it almost comes across like fake or cringy, or I don't know what word, but it doesn't have that. It's presented in a way that feels like genuinely hateful.
Yeah.
I also have a question. How about Dice Dark? I think that's how his name is. Because a lot of these characters, like, I don't know what their names are supposed to pronounce. Like, they have like complicated English names. I think this is the first time Ben Star play as a villain. This is Ramza's older brother.
Yeah. So Dice Dark. So, like I said, not all of the voices are. I saw somebody mention that sometimes the voice performance comes across as a little bit sleepy. And I think that is sort of fair. There are sometimes moments where I think it feels like maybe the voice performances are trying to be a little bit moody or whatever, and it kind of comes across as like sleepy. I think sleepy is a good adjective for it. So I really like the voice performance overall, but there are certain lines where I'm like, maybe not so high on. Dice Dark is voiced by Ben Starr, and he's Ramza's older brother. And this is kind of obvious from the get-go, so this isn't really a spoiler. It turns out he's not the most purest of people. And I feel like some of his lines are really good, but also some of them are a little sleepy. But they're mostly good. I'm being a little bit nitpicky here. But he kind of comes across as, an opportunist. He's mainly looking out for his own position of power and things like that. But yes, it's very clearly Ben Starr. Ben Starr, that's the role he plays in the game. And yeah, I think for the most part, I think the voice acting is a great addition, and I think elevates the script and just like the world, because it makes some characters more memorable to me than they were without voices, right?
You know what? One game I was thinking of? I was thinking of Witch of the Holy Knight. Remember that, Josh? It's like how you play the original PC version, there was no voice acting. But when you buy the remaster, you got all that voice acting. It just changes the game.
Right, yeah, definitely. That, like, adding voices to that added a lot to that game. Like, it's so well done in that game.
Now, I was actually watching some footage of the PSP version to make some comparisons here, and it's the War of the Lions version. And it's one of those things where you realize that this remake is also just much smoother, much faster. It has a speed up button, like a toggle that you can hold, that basically it's like a turbo mode. So when it's an enemy's turn and they're doing their movement and attack or action or whatever, you can kind of speed through that a little bit. You can speed through dialogue if you want. Even just like Ramza moving on the world map, you can speed through. So that's all a little bit faster. But not only that, load times a lot faster. If you played the PSP version of Final Fantasy Tactics like I did, almost any spell you cast, like for some reason the PSP version would struggle to it would chug to play that, which is weird because you could get custom firmware where then it would work fine. So it wasn't like necessarily a hardware limitation, but anyway,
it was a bug in the game.
Yeah,
someone fixed it.
Yeah, you could if you played the PSP version, there's a very good chance you might have played a custom firmware version where it fixed that. But it's I was watching a video, a recording of it, and like, man, I remember that it chugged, but I almost forgot how much it chugged in that PSP version. And of course, that's not a problem at all in this version. Even things like in the PSP version, when you enter a battle, or even the original version, PlayStation 1 version, you see like the positions that you place your units on, but it's like divorced from the map that you're placing the units on. You just see like a square of positions that you can place your team on. But in this version, you actually see where it is on the map, which is just kind of like a small little thing, but it helps you, have some context to like, oh, I should put one character here and another character here, right? Versus having no context at all. In the older versions of Final Fantasy Tactics, if you wanted to do like a random battle, you would have to like, if you remember how the world map works, the world map is like a bunch of different nodes that you walk across, like lines and dots, and you walk across these nodes, and then certain nodes could initiate a random battle. Like you'd walk across it, and there was like a 50% chance it would initiate a random battle. And I specifically remember, like, I want to do some random battles because I want to train up a bit or whatnot. You would just like walk back and forth across a node several times and try to initiate it, right? Here you can just click it, and then when you get into battle, you can flee if you want. And then also, I don't remember if in the original version you could flee right away or if you had to like get into the battle first, but I think it's easier to like basically decide, do you want to fight or do you not want to fight? So that's a nice thing to have. And then also, there's kind of an infamous part in Final Fantasy Tactics where you take on Wheatgraph in Chapter 3, I believe, and if your save file in the older versions was at that fight, you were stuck. You had to beat him or else. And it kind of infamously became a soft lock potential moment. In this version, that's not a problem. You can retreat. Whenever you have those series of battles, you can basically decide if you need to, I'm not ready or I didn't prepare properly, you can just go back to the world map. So that's not a problem anymore. So my point is,
but if you go resume the battle, is it in like the middle of the battle, or do you have to do it from like
you do have to start over? Yeah, you do have to start over. So like if you have like a series of 3 battles, and you get to the third one and you decide, I'm not prepared enough, this isn't going to work, you basically can go back to before the first battle started. So yes, you're going to lose some progress, but at least you're not going to get stuck where it's like, well, tough luck.
Battle to the death, unwinnable. Let's go.
Yeah. So there's a lot of quality of life. It's just a much snappier game overall. So like absolutely no issues there. I think actually one of the ways that Scott put it in his review that like this game is more accessible than ever. Like a lot of those just better hardware, not only better hardware, but just decisions to make the game just a little bit smoother, less issues with performance and choke points and whatnot.
I have a stupid question.
What's that?
I have a stupid question.
Go.
Do you remember in a few years back when Tactics Ogre Reborn came out, they introduced a new gameplay element with the tarot cards on the field giving you like temporary stat buffs that were pretty essential for like harder fights in that game because the enemy could do it to you too. Did they introduce any like new gameplay elements in the Ivalice Chronicles? Not necessarily in the same manner, but like just like any new gameplay elements in the same way or similar wavelength that the Tactics Ogre Reborn did?
There are a few like small little tweaks that honestly I'm not sure if they were there originally. For example, one of the systems in the game is like a poaching system where you can. It's a thief skill, and so one of the thief skills, if a thief kills a monster enemy, they can poach it and they can get that monster's carcass. They literally call it that, a carcass, and you can turn that in for an item. That was in the original game, but monster carcasses had like a common version and a rare version. I might be wrong on this, but I think in older versions you couldn't tell if it was common or rare until you went to turn it in. But now, right when you get the carcass, you can there's a little star next to it if it's rare, so you kind of know immediately. Like, and that's a quality of life thing. There is a small edition that's not really a content edition, but a quality of life edition that might be or is abusable. There is an autosave. And the autosave, I believe it's like 3 different slots in battle. So you can more or less rewind 3 turns in battle. It's kind of funny
Three
because
houses again.
well, like Tactics Ogre has some rewind functionality, but it's a little bit. You have to be a little bit careful with it. I'm going to get a little bit technical here, not too technical, but wordy. So like you have 3 autosaves. If you load your most recent autosave and then redo your turn and then realize, oop, that didn't work out, and load again, now your 2 most recent autosaves are like at the same spot because it's like your first try and then your second try it like loaded over itself, and then if you reload it your autosave again, it creates the third autosave, kind of rotates through, so all your autosaves are end up on the same turn. I don't know if that makes sense, but like the way the autosave works is each time you rewind it basically saves a new autosave, but now it turns out that it's autosaved on the same turn 3 times. So you can't permanently go back because it just keeps saving over the most recent turns. However, there is some ways you can abuse this. For example, there's a treasure hunter mechanic in the game that chemists have where you go onto a certain spot on the map and you can get an item, and the item is either a common item or a rare item. And I figured out that if you go to a spot and it's a common item, you can actually load your autosave from the most recent turn before you picked up the item and then try again and then see if it's a rare item. And if it's not, you can load the autosave, try again, load, try again. And you can actually do that as many times as you need to get the rare item. Like, that's not really the intent of it, but it's not the intent of it, but it's a way you could abuse it to your need, and I definitely did.
But gave you the option, so it's valid.
Wasn't there a new difficulty option too?
Oh, yeah, there are difficulty options. I honestly don't remember what the original difficulty options were or not. I played on the standard mode.
The original game. The original game had no difficulty options.
Yeah, it didn't have. This one has what? Squire, Tactic, and something else. It has 3 modes basically. One is the default, then there's a new hard mode, and then there's an easy mode. But I don't know if the default is the same as it was, right? Because the Ivalice Chronicles is the only one which has difficulty options, and there is different balancing, right, for this version. So I don't know how it compares. I will probably compare them when I replay the others, but I have no idea. But you brought up the speed up mode, and I'm kind of annoyed at how they implemented it over here, because like I've said this multiple times in different places that I hate turbo modes which require you to hold a button. I like having the option to just, press it once and it goes into the high speed mode. Like Digimon Time Strangers demo lets you just like adjust the speed with like the analog stick and you can leave it there. That's how it should be. I don't like pressing. Like I think the Cold Steel 1 and 2 on Steam, you need to hold one of the trigger buttons to use turbo mode, and over here you have to hold it down, but you can't like rest your finger there throughout, because you have to, like, if you reach a point where someone says something or if there's dialogue or a cutscene in a battle, you have to like leave it and then press it back again. So it's kind of a nitpick, but I wish there was, and I also wish the turbo mode was a bit faster. So I don't know if they are planning on doing any updates to this game, because they've already pushed out like 2 patches for the Switch 2 and Switch version, which like I've had pre-release. I don't know if more are coming or not, but they have pushed out updates already. I would like some of these things to be fixed. Like, like you mentioned autosave, the classic mode, the only new feature they've added is autosave. Nothing else. Everything else is the same, and that feels like a weird addition to add when you don't add anything else. But maybe they did it because, like how with Nier Automata's opening, people thought it had autosave and they just like quit out and they were like, I have to play the 1 hour again. So maybe they just added it for that.
This is a tangent, but I know some people who played Nier Automata and they got the eat the fish joke ending, and they did not save for hours before then.
That's awesome.
And you get a game over, and there is no save point or checkpoint. It's wherever you last hard saved. I know
that happened to me. I lost 4 hours.
Yeah, nice. I know people. Anyways, but yeah, I do agree with you on the speed up. It's not like the perfect implementation of it, and Scott also mentioned this in his review. Scott, I think, did a really wonderful review. But yeah, it's one of those speed up modes. Like, I didn't do it like through like the story stuff because I wanted to see the story again. But like in battle, it is a sort of thing like Scott or Mikhail mentioned, where you hold down the button for it to turbo mode, but then there are certain things that it'll like stop the turbo. It's like, I think it's like trying to help you, like, wait, you might want to see this part, and it's like, no, I don't, I want to turbo through this also. So you have to like lift off the button and then press the button again to like have it continue going. And this is actually not the first game that's done this sort of thing, where when you're trying to turbo through something, you kind of have to like press hold, and then try to like, you have to kind of keep clicking it to kind of keep turboing it. And it's like, I wish this was a little bit different. But I'm glad it's there at all. Otherwise, like the story itself, if you haven't played Final Fantasy Tactics, you know, the premise is that there was this War of the Lions that took place in Ivalice at this time period, and the whole game is kind of framed as sort of a retelling of this classic conflict that took place. And the hero of the conflict in the record books is Delita, one of the main characters. But then this is sort of like the actual true history of the War of the Lions, and how it's actually kind of how it proceeded through the actions of primarily two people, the Ramza and the Beowulf family, as well as Delita. And as you might suspect, not to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't played it, the relationship between Ramza and Delita, they're not like best friends necessarily. They're not heated rivals. It's a little bit more complicated than that. You know, they're similar goals, different methods, sort of things. And it's a really compelling story, honestly. And I feel like everyone has said this, so I probably sound like I'm just repeating what you already know, probably, in terms of motivations and character dynamics and villainous, plots and, different, conflicting ideals and things like that. And there is a big component of this I think actually, for example, Hayes Madsen, friend of our website, he was on the podcast once, he wrote a review for Inverse, and he touches upon how this game has a big thematic, just a huge themes on things like class conflict and, conflict between those with the means, with resources and those without, right? And this is a really significant part of the game. Ramza, for example, is a son of a noble family, but his mother was not a noble mother, so he's kind of like a half, he's a half brother to the noble Beowulf family. And so like he finds himself in this unique position where he has the rights and bloodline of a noble family, but he also has this kind of backdrop of not being like he fully belongs there. And so without going too much into the story, I just do think I said this when I started this section of this podcast. I really do think Final Fantasy Tactics is about as close to a must-play as there is in this genre. Like, I kind of don't like the term must-play, because I feel like you don't have to play anything, But in terms of like just the influence that this game has had on the genre, and all the different games that pay homage to this, it's how the way it tells its story, both narrative here and also the many mechanics that people almost find commonplace in the genre today. I feel like a lot of that comes back to this game. So I really do feel like it's almost worth, if you are an RPG person at all, you really should. This is the perfect opportunity to play Final Fantasy Tactics if you haven't.
I also think it's just like, even if you're not into RPGs and just want to like witness a story, just put it like on the easiest difficulty. I think it's just like, even if you're in there just just curious about the game, like I think it just witnessing the story and seeing how that plays out, and like how, it's almost like it's a timeless story to me, because it feels like it always feels relevant. It always feels like a good a good plot about like the nature of humanity, and like all these things about class conflict, discrimination, general, like, what defines us as humans, and what we're willing to fight for. I think it rings true now more so than ever.
I mean, I basically second all of that. I have, like, I played War of the Lions. That was the first time I played it, and it's been over 10 years. But it's a story that sometimes, you play an RPG, and it's like Dragon Age 2 or Skyrim, or like, what was the story beats? I remember the high parts, but I don't remember like individual bits. But Tactics, I've just latched onto much more strongly, because it is a story that resonates. It's a story that has so many compelling characters and moments and relationships between people, whether they're, like Adam said, they're not allies, they're not it's not just like those are the good guys, those are the bad guys, these are the allies, these are the antagonists. It's a lot more intricate than that, but not in a way that's like cloying or like convoluted for convolution's sake. Just more in a this is a real conflict sort of thing where you end up being allied with people just because your goals are aligned, not because everyone on your team is paragons of sainthood, and everyone on the enemy team is, dastardly ne'er-do-wells, and it's just a lot more layered. So I second everything that Adam, Josh, and of course Scott, our reviewer, and Hayes, the reviewer over at Inverse, have all said. It's not to be too preachy, but yeah, it is a must play in the term that anything can be a must play. Like Adam said, you don't have to play anything. That's a good way to phrase that.
I'm just going from my original comparison. This is actually the very first game that I imported and played actually on the PS1. So my cousin basically got the Japanese version because we love Final Fantasy and we would just take anything from Final Fantasy. I don't know how he got the Japanese version back in those days, but he did. And we actually beat the game without knowing a single Japanese. And then when the English version came over, and we actually beat the game again. So
that's the classic early importer experience, man. I kind of love those days of like you just kind of imported something like a Japanese game, and then you had a region free machine that you modded, and you kind of stumbled your way through the game and got to the end. It's like, man, I had a lot of fun even though I didn't understand a lick of what I just.
It's like I didn't understand dick. All I know is that old guy is super OP for some stupid reason. Why is this guy so strong? So that was basically it, right? But
that's the moral of the story. Just old guys are powerful and they're overpowered.
Can you guess the first PS1 game I imported?
Which one?
WWF Warzone.
Nice. That's good.
You know what my final party in this game was? 5 monks.
Mustadio.
No, just 5 monks.
Okay,
Just Monk Ramza and 4 other monks, and they were just nameless dudes too. They weren't any of the named characters. Monks are just.
Monks are good.
I was actually chatting on social media briefly, and Harper J actually mentioned monks are good on a timeline. Like, yeah, that is true. Monks, they can punch people from close up, they can punch people from afar, they can heal each other, and they can revive each other. That's all you need. And you don't need weapons, and you don't need MP. They're just a little bit.
Do you know how to use the arithmetic class? I remember that's always the most broken class from like.
I don't. The arithmetic class almost takes too much effort to get the prerequisites to learn it. Like to get the classes that you need to go through to like be able to access the class, and then to gain all the MP or the JP that you need to learn the abilities. So like, I think if you wanted to spend all the time to train up arithmetics, they're worth it. I just almost don't think they're worth the time to train them up. And they're slow. I actually kind of realized playing through the game, like that's the arithmetic class biggest weakness is that they're way slower than everyone else. Like they get half the number of turns. So
yeah. I also try to remember. I remember the Japanese version and the US version had like huge discrepancy with like the JP. Like certain class requires way less JP to learn. I think in the US version.
I played War of the Lions, but I'd be lying if I told you, oh, I remember precisely how much JP this class took, and it's the same or different now, right? Like, no, some classes like.
But they didn't add any quality of life, right? Like double JP or anything.
No,
like that, right? Not like cheats, right?
Not that I'm aware of. The Squire class, which is the first kind of your base class, can learn an ability called JP Up, which is like a support ability, and you can equip that, and then you get more JP. No matter what you do. So it's kind of a very obvious tactic is have all of your characters learn JP up, slap that on their support ability relatively early, and then you can gain a lot of JP early on to change them into whatever class you want. Not to get too much into the mechanics of the game, but I feel like this is one of those things where not to say necessarily that Final Fantasy Tactics did it first. I'm sure there are other games that had similar ideas that Tactics borrowed from, but this whole idea of like you have your main class abilities. You can equip the abilities of a secondary class. You can equip different counter abilities from whatever counter abilities you learn from whatever class. You can equip like a support ability from whatever class you've learned it from. You can equip all these things separately. So for those who like, build craft, like character creation, theory crafting type stuff, you can do that. Whereas like, oh, I've seen people talking about like, oh, if you kind of combine the abilities of ninjas and monks, you can get like a really, really powerful unit or whatever. And that's one thing that Tactics became very well known for, and a lot of RPGs and especially tactical games since then drew inspiration from that. Again, not to say that Tactics was the first to absolutely ever do any of that, but it does it to very, very good effect. So,
and it's like the complete package in terms of gameplay, story, music, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I really do agree with Scott's score of a 9 out of 10, and we've said many times that the score doesn't really matter, like read the text. But I do think that the things that he criticized are the things like, well, if you want to play the Ivalice Chronicles version, the visuals are what they are. They're a little bit smeary. There's a little bit of a texture filter on the visuals that he kind of goes into, and they're just, that's what it is. If you're playing PC version, I'm assuming you can mod this at some point. And like other toggles are just, it's kind of this global toggle between, do you want this version or the other version, like the classic version? And he wished there was more options there. So it was just kind of the implementation was just enough that even though he loves this game, that was the one thing he was most critical on, was just kind of those decisions on how to frame this remaster in this package. So I kind of agree with him on that is a little bit awkward, and that's just kind of how it is.
Even if it wasn't like individual sliders for like text, voice acting, graphics, music, like that seems like it could be logistically complicated. Even if it was just like a version A, version B that you could toggle, even if it like you had to reload your save or your chapter or something. But nope, just choose from the get-go. And that's kind of how they had it set it up.
And there's also one more thing I want to bring up because of how they've implemented and like how they've structured this. So when you boot up the game on PC, you're essentially getting into the Ivalice Chronicles package launcher, which lets you choose either Ivalice Chronicles or it lets you choose the classic version. And when you choose either of them, it actually like loads up like a different exe or something like that. And this is something I didn't notice when I was playing the Switch and Switch 2 versions, because over there it just has like a loading screen transition into the version you've picked. But why I noticed this specifically on PC is so the game I believe has let me just double check this, de novo. 1 second, let me just check this, because I ran into an issue with sorry, let me just double check this. Yeah, so it like the Steam page says it has de novo. The reason I noticed this is because I had the game running on 2 devices at once because I wanted to check something. And to do that on PC, you can't have like the same Steam account playing both online. You can't have like 2 devices online playing the same game. So I put both devices into airplane mode. And when I tried launching the other, like the classic version, then I got an alert saying that you need to be online for the first time when you boot this up. And then I was like, wait, does this have de novo? And yes, it does. So annoying like edge case issue, just to keep in mind that usually when you play a game which has de novo on Steam, you just need to be online the first time you launch it, and then for a week you're fine. But over here, I guess it treats each version as individual games, so you have to do it for both of them. But yeah, that was annoying.
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of use case, that's probably pretty niche, but it does kind of elucidate like, oh, it really is just kind of two different. It really is just like a 2 different executables on the same thing.
Yeah, and it's like you just have a launcher. It feels a bit. Yeah. It feels a bit. It doesn't feel as polished as it should be. Like if you like boot up the package, just like transition into that like it does on console. But I guess this is how they implemented it on PC. But maybe it'll be easier to mod like separately this way. We'll find out when the game is out in a few days and like modders start messing around with it.
I was actually reading through Scott's review to see if there's anything I failed to mention, and there's just one small thing that I almost took for granted. In the Ivalice Chronicle version, while you're in battle, you can press a button and rotate the camera so you get more of a top-down view of the battlefield, which a lot of these battlefields have like elevation or even just like mountains or buildings in the way. So sometimes the isometric angle, while you can rotate the battlefield, sometimes it's nice to have that option to get the top down, more like tactical view of things. And it is useful, and I use that many, many times. The only unfortunate part about that is you can't actually like keep it in that view. It's more like you can kind of like peek at it. Like, all right, let's take the top down, let's look at the top down view. and see what you need to see, kind of get your bearings. And then when you actually go back to like actually controlling your units, it goes back to the isometric view. But still, it's a valuable addition. But Scott says, and I agree, it would be nice if you could just keep it at that top-down view, because why not, and just control it that way. But I think, maybe the sprites don't work out or whatever. But
oh yeah, like good you brought this up, because this was the thing where you had to, when you go into the tactical view, I believe they call it, you can move the cursor, but you can't actually like select that. You have to wait for it to go back to the normal view, and then you can like issue a command. Isn't that what it is?
Yes. So you can't actually play the game in that view.
Yeah. This is something, again, like it would be a nice quality of life like feature which they could add in an update if they are still planning on working on it. It would be really nice.
Hey, Square Enix sometimes does weird updates. Might be like 9 months from now.
Cross.
Right.
Yeah, like
or Dragon Quest.
Here we
3.
fixed the game for you.
Dragon Quest 3 speeding up Ramia almost 6 months later. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's nice.
And Romancing Saga 2 also, when they did the Switch 2 edition update, they just like, here are lots of fixes and stuff. Yeah, enjoy.
Which is, it's nice that they do that, but they take their time. So
it's unpredictable, and it takes a while. Yeah, thank you, Adam, for going over your experience with Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. Of course, it's basically available on everything. You played the PC version. Scott played the PS5 version. His review is up on the site, rpgsite.net. Also, do check out Hayes Madsen's review at inverse.com, friend of the site, and also reviewed Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles.
Actually, rollingstone.com, not Inverse. For this
I was wrong. He writes for Inverse as his main job, but he sometimes will review for other places. I didn't realize it was Rolling Stone.
Okay. Our apologies. But yeah, check out Hayes' review at Rolling Stone. The other game we're going to talk about, as I teed up, is another big release that went to version 1.0, and that is, of course, Hades 2. Hades, like, admittedly, when we covered Hades 1, it was kind of like a... Maybe, Adam, you can give a little bit more context to this. It was like it was a little bit of a should we, shouldn't we. Obviously, the Hades-like hadn't existed yet. It has a lot of RPG elements, but kind of more of an isometric action game. Though you could see how it kind of fit sort of the vibe of the site, the scope of the site. But it was kind of a decision that, well, we covered the first one, now the second one's grandfathered in, so we're covering Hades 2. Hades 2, I think, Mikhail, you're the only person that's played version 1.0. Is that correct? I don't want to.
I think for this podcast, because I bought it way back when we went to early access, but I haven't played it in several months and just won't have to be at the 1.0 for a while.
I know James has been playing it as well, and besides that, it is I believe just me, and it's quite an interesting thing because so this is one of the rare cases where I ended up doing not only just the comparison or whatever, but also the review. And I think I was looking back at it, and it seems like the only other time I did that was Fantasy Life I, and I ended up scoring both of these games a 10, which is pretty funny looking at how things worked out. But I played Hades 2 as well when it just hit early access, and then I used to like dip my toes in for each update, because did any of y'all like play the early access for the original Hades?
Not the original Hades. I waited till 1.0 for the first Hades on that one, because that was a weird case of like it was Epic Game Store exclusive for quite a while, and I was
So basically, just before getting into the actual game itself, they handled early access quite differently this time. So instead of it being Epic exclusive and like being an actual, like not rough, I should say, because nothing they've released so far has been rough, but that actually felt like an early access thing when they released it on EGS, and they were iterating and fixing a lot, and it had a longer early access period also, if I remember correctly. But for Hades 2, like what they released in May or March 2024, I forget which one it was, that was already like as polished, and it had more content than the original Hades, like right from the get-go. And they've just been like building on that from the start, and it's massive, like what they've shipped right now. So like Hades 2, if you've played the original Hades, in the original Hades you played as Zagreus, and now you're playing his sister Melinoe. and there's like I forget what are those two dots on the E. I keep forgetting what they're called, but yeah, that's how you spell her name. With Hades 2, if you've not played the original Hades, it's fine, even though it is a direct sequel.
Is it umlaut? I'm trying to take it. It's not umlaut.
That's for the that's for you. That's for you. The
Yeah.
metal U thing. I don't know what it's called for the E, because I gave up on timing it in the review also, because like usually when there are these weird syntaxes, I end up copy pasting the word, but I think I just gave up after some point. But yeah,
It's
so
like when I write, like it's like writing Pokemon. It's like no one writes the
Yeah.
stylized E in Pokemon. Don't be crazy.
yeah. That's a good way to put it up. So yeah, I'm going to just assume most people have not played Hades who are going to play Hades 2, because it feels similar to Silk Song, from Team Cherry, because there's so much hype going into this that even people who haven't played the original are just going to jump in. So it is a roguelike action isometric structured game where you play as Melinoe, and you go through basically a room, clear out enemies, and then when you do that, you have to pick one of multiple paths. Sometimes there'll be 2 paths, sometimes there'll be 3 paths, and you get to see what the reward will be essentially before you choose what path you want to take. So it could be like so Hades is it has a Greek mythology themed thing with gods and stuff, and they basically will give you their boons to make you stronger for that specific run. Hades is a game where you will do hundreds of runs and you'll slowly get stronger with permanent progression. You'll have temporary progression in that specific run. These boons essentially will forge how you approach that specific run you're taking on. So like you can have some which will help you improve your magic, which will give you ranged abilities, some which will give you more melee focused stuff. And as you make your way through different rooms, take on smaller bosses, take on the actual big bosses, you'll start realizing that okay, I've been like improving my magic ability, so maybe I should pick boons that give me more of that. And then when I get to the shop room, I should upgrade those specific abilities, and that's the flow of the game as you work towards defeating the final boss. Now, if you played the original Hades, Hades was like quote unquote the final boss who you were aiming for in the beginning at least. And over here, what they've done is they've structured it a bit differently. So you have 2 paths which open up eventually. You start by just going downwards, but then you soon unlock the ability to go on the overworld, which is called the surface route. And when I had this happen, this was available during early access as well. They just finished the surface with 1.0 and they added a lot more like stuff throughout. But this specific branching focus, what they've done with Hades 2 and all the mechanics which they've added and the systems which they've added, which I'll cover in a bit, they basically told me that this is not just Hades 2, it feels like Hades 2 and 3 together. That's why I said it's like 2 sequels combined. Now, I started out my review by saying I'm always skeptical when developers I love and respect who do like they completely do different things with each release, they do a sequel. I had this with Hotline Miami. That's the example I use. Like Hotline Miami 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. When Hotline Miami 2 was announced, this was the time I was like, young and hopeful with games, and I said this is going to be the best game ever, and it came out and I did not enjoy it at all. Like it was frustrating to play. The only thing I liked about it was the music. I did not care for the story. I did not care for the difficulty which they added. I did not care for how they tweaked some of the enemies and stuff. I just do not ever replay that game. And Hotline Miami 1 is a game I go back to quite often, and I just listen to the soundtrack for 2. So with Hades 2, I was skeptical because Supergiant's first game was Bastion, like a fantastic isometric action RPG. After that, they changed things up completely with Transistor, which was like also action, but there's also like strategy and turn-based stuff. Completely different setting, very emotional story and stuff like that. After Transistor, they did something completely different again. They did like a sports RPG with Pyre, which is kind of like a basketball RPG hybrid thing. And then after that, they did Hades, which is a roguelike, which they have not done. But this, for Hades 2, it was their first ever sequel. So I was like, is this just like, a developer playing it safe because they made so much money and Hades 1 was so popular? Are they just going to do it that way? But at least from what I've played, and I've played a shitload of Hades 2 now through early access and through the full release. In fact, I have considered deleting the game from my Switch 2 and Steam Deck because it's just like tempting to just boot it up and I lose like 20 minutes again. So yeah, they nailed it. Like, I have no complaints with Hades 2. Everything they did with it, they instead of just, like adding more weapons or adding more boons and adding more gods, they tweaked the whole flow of combat. You have a witchcraft focus because Melinoe, who's the princess, is also a witch. So you have like this alchemy thing. You have the mirror from the first game, which is your main progression system for permanent upgrades and all. That's been replaced with incantations and arcana cards over here. So you have like the whole, they've implemented this whole witchcraft thing. Like a friend of mine, another critic, Chris Schilling, he said Supergiant Games has honed their brackets witchcraft with Hades 2, and I absolutely agree with that phrase which he's used over here. Like they've just nailed how they implemented the witchcraft into everything over here. Like her ability, everything is magical now. Instead of having, I don't know if you played Hades, you had these. What is the word they use? You had these diamond-like things which you could cast into enemies, and they played a big part of your combat. But over here, you have these ranged like, AOE skills, and you have this thing which like traps enemies in place, and your boons will build into that. And then even the weapons which they have over here, like I kind of got into this lazy thing with Hades 2 where I found one weapon which worked for me, and I just ended up focusing on that for a majority of my playtime. And then as I unlocked the others through early access and started playing them, I was shocked at how different they played completely. So with 1.0, again, I stuck to because I was reviewing it, I stuck to my main weapon and I started doing the others. But I'm kind of getting into this Monster Hunter thing now where each of these weapons feels like I'm learning a new Monster Hunter weapon all over again. So it's kind of, there was already so much replay value in Hades 2, but now it feels like there's just insanely more stuff to do for me. So yeah, just enjoying it a lot, even though I've finished it, still playing it a lot. I actually started a new save file when 1.0 review code came in because I was curious how they handled onboarding completely. Like it's weird to carry over your early access save knowing that they might have changed stuff for areas you've already experienced, and they've added so much to the 1.0 launch. Like if Josh, you played the early access, right? What did you think when you played it compared to the original Hades?
It took me a little bit to get into it. I don't know how I feel about the 1.0. I've yet to play it, but like since it was still a very primitive or like incomplete version of the game, like I didn't play much of like the early access updates to that game outside of like the first like 2 months it came out. But it's definitely a different like a cadence of Hades 1 to Hades 2 because Melinoe plays very differently. While Zagreus is very aggressive in his play style and his weapons, like Melinoe is a bit more deliberate, not as aggressive and forefront with her like the early weapons that you start out with. You have to play a little bit more, almost like in a mid range, while Zagreus really excelled at like a close range with his starting stuff. It is kind of getting like Hades had a pretty straightforward narrative once you started like uncovering like Zagreus's backstory and his like main goal, and like while with Hades 2 it's a little bit more murky because you have like Chrono, the god of time is like one of the big antagonists weaved into the narrative. I don't know anything else but like beyond that because they didn't like implement that other stuff yet when I played. But I think there's a lot of like interesting evolutions and enhancements to the formula that like as you said you don't necessarily need to play the first one, but I think the first one is such a hell of a game that like even if you're playing both Hades 1 and 2, you get something out of it because both of them are pretty different despite the same framework, and they both have interesting characters and stories to tell. Like I think it's like I think you'd be remiss to skip the first one just because you want to rush to the sequel. Though I understand like people have that sense of FOMO, but Hades 1 was also celebrated and very popular. So
I definitely agree with that because I played before Hades 1.0 was coming out. I actually thought of revisiting the original, and I played so much of that. So I still had it installed, right? So when I started playing Hades 2's 1.0 launch, and I like got back into the groove because I hadn't played it since I think I hadn't played it since June or May this year. When they had the Unseen update, I just like tried a bit of that, but then I decided since they said it's like coming out this year, I thought I'd just wait. So after playing for I think it was 3 days, and I put in like 20 hours in 3 days into Hades 2 1.0. I went back to Hades 1 and I was like, okay, this feels like so different to play right now. And I kind of like what they've kept common between both games is, you know, how amazing it feels to move, right? Like the gameplay
Yeah,
and movement and
very
animations,
snappy,
it's just
very responsive.
sublime.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that is the same, but then like you said, right, Hades 1 more aggressive and like close ranged in a way. Hades 2 feels mid ranged or actual range depending on what weapon you use. Even though there are melee weapons, the magic makes you play ranged in a way. Like you try and trap enemies in your AoE stuff and all. But then I started seeing a lot of parallels between the games. Like, you know, in Hades 1, the first quote unquote memorable boss you run into is Megara, part of the Fury sisters, right?
yeah.
And she becomes an important character throughout the story and all. And they have something similar over here with Skyla and the Sirens, and
Yeah.
again like an early game memorable boss, and with very good dialogue, memorable stuff. Music is actually one area where Hades 1 soundtrack is very celebrated because Darren Korb did a great job having like he had like perfect transitions. I think Hades 2 and Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 are the only games I'd say in the last decade that have handled transitions between like a lead up to a boss battle and the boss music as well. Like nothing else has come close to that. Usually you have like looping which will like sort of transition into like maybe a fade out or a fade in or something. But I think these games handled it in such a way that they timed it. So there's a video which, like, I'll link it in the staff chat. Someone made a video on how Octopath Traveler handles its time signatures and beats, so that depending on how you press A when you're progressing the dialogue, it'll always perfectly sync into a boss battle. So there'll be never a downtime in between that, like how you have in other games. So what Darren Korb has done for the soundtrack in Hades 1, or what he did, I should say, each boss battle or each theme to each area had like a slower, more methodical part where you had like maybe there'll be like a acoustic guitar or there'll be just bass and light drums, and then when the combat starts it goes into this heavy rock or metal theme where you have like distorted guitar, the tempo increases and stuff like that, but it's still using the same riffs as like the slower parts or the dialogue portions. Now, Hades 1 was kind of it had different genres blended into it, but most of the combat was always just like heavy rock and heavy metal, and I love that because I play guitar. I used to teach guitar also. With Hades 2, when I started playing the 1.0 and getting into boss battles, I was a bit surprised because it's not all the same. Some of them have like an industrial focus, some of them have like a doom metal focus. One of the songs is like the most like blatant Black Sabbath tribute I've heard ever, like early Black Sabbath stuff. So like and you know, like you said, right, Kronos, the Titan of Time, the main antagonist, or like at least I should say like one of the important ones or one of the important characters in this game who you will interact with quite a bit. Because of this whole time focus, what Darren Korb has done with the soundtrack is like different time signatures in the song. So like even in the battle against Kronos, the time signatures will change. Even in the like some of the mid game, not even like the proper boss battles, everywhere there's just like different time signatures thrown across and all. It's really interesting, and having this sort of stuff in a game soundtrack is just like, I guess I should have expected it because of the time focus here and Supergiant Games, who always like go above and beyond with art and music. But it's just like one of my favorite soundtracks of the year, and I've just continuously been listening to it when I've not been playing the game. Even when like I've been covering TGS news in the last week, I've just been listening to the Hades 2 soundtrack. So yeah, it's I just say that if you have not played Hades, I think I agree with Josh actually. If you've not played Hades 1 and 2 and you're seeing all the reviews for Hades 2 and everyone talking about it, I would still say I recommend playing Hades 1. Both games are fantastic. And so I didn't look this up beforehand or whatever, but when I was finishing my review and I like sent it into Adam, I just realized like, is Hades and like are Hades 1 and 2 the only game and sequel to get 10 on 10 on RPG side?
I
Maybe.
think that way back when there's like Danganronpa, like early Danganronpa reviews. Like I think we had someone who's like a super fan of them.
Okay.
Like
Okay,
just
okay,
before
yeah.
my tenure here.
Yeah, so
Either
this
way,
was like something which I just found it funny that yeah, like both fantastic games. I love both games. And you know what else I thought of? Have you played Total War Warhammer? unrelated to these two at all?
Not Warhammer specifically. I played other Total War games like Shogun.
Okay, so the reason I said that is because they had this thing where they merged the campaigns together, and I was just wondering if they ever do that with Hades 1 and 2, where imagine like if they just allow it so that once you start playing Hades, you can like transition between Hades 1 and 2 and like switch characters. That would be like an insane thing they do. Like if they ever like
That'd be
repackage or
interesting.
like
Yeah.
revisit these games, it would be like
One hell of a
crazy.
feat. Yeah, one hell of a
Yeah,
feat if they managed
so
that.
yeah, like I just think that Hades 1 and 2 have like some of the best in-game combat and movement I've ever experienced in an action game or whatever. I really think they did an amazing job even with the Switch port for this time, because Hades 1 was a bit rough on Switch when I played it, and that's where I played most of it, but Hades 2 really polished, and it has cross saves. Like, thank you for doing this. When I got the review code and I realized I could bring my early access save over, I was so happy. Even though I started a new one to see how it feels, but I was so happy I didn't have to like, that's probably how I managed to like put in
Yeah,
more
very
time
much
and finish.
appreciated. Like I assume a good chunk of people will get Hades 2 on like for their desktop PC and like handheld device.
Yeah.
Because of that cross save, and it's not being sold at a premium price either. These are pretty affordable, release.
Yeah, it's a $30
Yeah.
game, and it's a free. If you buy it on Switch, you get a free upgrade to the Switch 2 version, and like
Good.
save works and everything. And this is another like with Hades 1, which Nintendo handled the physical release for on Switch. They're doing the same thing with this, and it is a proper physical release. It's not a key
Cool.
card, and it's coming
Nice.
out in November. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is a
Supergiant
premium
is like-
$50. But yeah,
So
It's a-
Supergiant is such a consistent developer. Like they always have like the consumers back. Like it feels like they level with their players, and they kind of understand the assignment of each of the game releases. Like they're super consistent and super high quality. Like whether they jive with you or not is a different matter. But like like for example, like a lot of people may not like jive with roguelike games, and the Hades games. I don't know. I don't think they'll change your mind, but I know several people who started being more open to roguelikes after playing through Hades, the first Hades. I assume Hades 2 will have a similar effect on people. But if people but if people don't drive with roguelikes, that's totally fine too. There's other but I really appreciate Supergiant, like as you mentioned when you're chronicling their game development history, like they're willing to take risks, completely switching up genres, completely switching up play styles, and like this one is like their first true sequel of like a prior game, like not only evolving like the formula, but like kind of just putting their whole weight behind of like what is a sequel in the first place, and how much can we kind of jam pack in there for a pretty like understandable price point. And I think a lot, and that's kind of been some of the talk around like how Silksong had it, like, hey, this is a pretty affordable price, and you're offering so much enjoyable like fucking game content in it with this like at a pretty understandable low price point, like relatively low.
Yeah, so with Hades 2, they said it's been in development for 4.5 years, and that's a really long time for like what for this. But yeah, the game is just $5 more than Hades 1, and I think it's like I haven't put in like double the amount of time, because like when you know how to play Hades 2 went a bit faster because I already knew what to expect in some ways, even though this literally feels like it has double the volume with how they've structured the game. You have two different paths to take, and the bosses and the different phases is just like I'm absolutely floored by. Don't want to get into spoilers, but I will say that when people actually reach some of the final and non like close to final bosses, this will not be anything they expect, even if they've played like hundreds of hours of Hades 1. I'll leave it at that without getting into spoilers. But yeah, what you said with how if you don't like roguelikes, this might not change your mind. But I think even I know many of my friends who don't care for the genre at all. They played Hades 1, and everything, like it has this thing where it gives you a bit of lore, it'll give you a bit of character development, it'll give you like, it just dangles the carrot enough where and the gameplay being as good as it is, people just feel like playing it more and more, and then it clicks for them, and suddenly they've played 60 hours and they're like, oh, this is the first roguelike I've played, I love it. So yeah, it is one of the games.
Yeah, it's repetitive in nature, but it definitely turns it into its strength, because like it has it weaves the narrative and the character exchanges like while with always the roguelike nature in mind, the repetitive nature in mind, where you have like so many variations to like character and boss exchanges. Like you go upon a boss like for like the 20th 30th time, and they're still exchanging new dialogue with keeping that amount of like times they've met in mind, and it's like, and you have this kind of ongoing, evolving narrative between them, just with new voiced lines, and you're kind of left blown away. Like, man, they're still talking about new stuff, even though I fought this boss so many times already.
I think that was one thing about the original Hades that really shocked me was just how much dialogue there is. It's like a crazy amount of dialogue. Like I expected it to be like, oh, this is going to be repetitive, and I'm just going to hear the same, conversations over and over and over as I do these runs. And it's like, no, instead it's like I'm on my like 25th or 30th run, and I'm still getting new dialogue. So I expect there to be more here.
They're crazy, yeah. The Super Giant is crazy, but I love them for it. So yeah, thank you, Mikhail, for checking out, having time to like check out the 1.0 release of Hades 2 among like just already a crazy busy video game season. It's just it's once again like, hey, probably one of the like best game releases this year. Kind of just like throw it in there of like just already so many other things.
I mean, they're kind of different genres or like different subgenres, but like Bang Bang Bang, Silk Song, Tactics, which obviously is a remaster, but still an excellent game. Hades, like those are 3 bangers back to back to back, and I'm sure I'm skipping one unintentionally as well. From the last
I mean, everyone's been a lot of people have been warming up like the brand new Silent Hill, like the first new Silent Hill game, like in many years, and like they really killed it, like in a good way.
I just find it funny that last month, like not RPGs, but then you had Shinobi Art of Vengeance and Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which were like, new entries in beloved franchises that haven't had new entries in a while, and both of them turned out good. And then this month you have like suddenly shocker, you have Silk Song and you have Hades 2, and again both of them turned out good. Like, so yeah, like crazy good year for games, and just
if anything,
a game I just finished and we just talked about, Trail's first chapter is getting excellent reviews. Like,
if anything, like we've been like we have a good problem in our hands. It's like there's just too many good games are coming out. I mean, that's a good problem to have, but also, it's a lot of people want to get to these, and they're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. But you kind of feel like you do have a little bit of. You feel a little bit peer pressure, like, man, I wish I had like I could replicate myself like five of me playing all these games at once.
I wish every game
had myself
a turbo mode. You
the guides and I could play the games.
You signed up for that, Chow.
Have fun, Chow.
Is anyone on this podcast right now going to be able to beat 100 line before end of year?
There's no. So I thought I would, but
Colin.
Maybe
no. This podcast right now. This podcast right now.
No, there's no way. I have way too much stuff on my plate already.
And I wouldn't even put that game on my portfolio, so I'm gonna finish Silent Hill once I'm done Trails.
And a new Atelier game came out, or not. I don't know if it came out or is it coming out. I forgot when that
came out.
Yeah, okay. I think it came out. People are talking about it already.
Okay.
Are we allowed to talk
our reviewer is still working on that, but it released yesterday at the time of recording. So
I think we'll circle back,
I have
back to that.
5,000 features up on the site in the week. I don't even remember what went up when. Yeah. It's just like I woke up on Saturday and I was like, time to relax.
But like getting into the features, like since we mentioned the new Atelier, you put some, I guess, a little bit of time into the new Reslieriana, the Red Alchemist, and the White Guardian, putting your impressions on the PC port and Steam Deck. Like, do you have like anything else to say on it besides just like the technical impressions on it, or did you?
I may as well just go through the few features I have done before we move on to the news, because there are a lot of things which we have up this week. So like for Atelier, it's a bit weird because you know how Atelier Sophie 2 came out after they had done like Ryza 1 and Ryza 2, and they did that as like this quote unquote game which is turn based again properly and like kind of appealing to the older fans.
Yeah,
this feels like they're trying to do the same thing again. I haven't paid much attention to the story stuff because I wanted to finish off my comparisons and all that and then do a new save file playthrough, which I have started. So I don't know what happens like maybe after 10 hours or whatever, but I will say that I do not like this as much as I like Sophie 2, in a sense that this feels more like Nelke, if that makes sense. Did you play that?
I'm familiar with it, but I didn't play it. But
So yeah, it basically feels like more of a side game, not a mainline game, even
Okay.
in how they present the story to you. The combat is very nice though. Like it is proper turn-based combat. They have like some active time elements, like perfect guard. If you time your QT right, and they have this. It kind of reminded me of Expedition 33, where they try and make it accessible, and they'll add this thing where if you don't want to do the block on time, we'll enable a parry for you or whatever. And they have a similar thing where they say if you enable this, you won't get a perfect block. So keep that in mind. And I'm
So
like, why
so
would you
there's actually
even
like
add
active defense in the game then, like when there's an
Yes, there
incoming
is.
enemy
There is.
attack.
You can block. If you block normally, you take less damage when the enemy is attacking you, or if you block at the correct time, you take even less damage, or you get a boost or something like that. And my main takeaway from the game, based on what I've played, is there are a shitload of loading screens like throughout.
Okay.
In the prologue, you literally have like on Switch, there's like 5 seconds to move from one room to the other, and I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, is this like one of those live, like one of those online only gacha games where it has to load
Oh
data when you
yeah.
move from
Ugh.
one room to the other? But yeah, it is a bizarre game in some ways, but it's not hooking me as much as Sophie 2 did. So I'm still going to play it because I play every Atelier game, but it is not hooking me as much as Sophie 2 did when it comes to his narrative. So I will see how
Interesting.
things go. But yeah, like in terms of the differences, this is a Switch 1 game. It's kind of impressive for a Switch 1 game because some of the Atelier games run like dog shit. Like, the Lydia and Soel original was trash. I don't know how people played it on Switch. But then this one feels stable on Switch 2. It has faster loading via backward compatibility. And it plays well on PC handhelds. PC port is good. It has a ton of settings like you'd expect from a modern Gus game. So yeah, it's good for people who want to get into it. But I think it's unfortunate timing because I know people who are gonna buy it haven't played all the recent Ateliers, and they're like, I'll just play Ryza DX because I haven't played Ryza 3 yet. So bad timing on bad planning, I guess, from Koei Tecmo on that front. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Okay.
Atelier. I think we'll. I don't know if anyone else is gonna play it over here. James might play it because he plays Atelier, but yeah, I don't know when
I
our
do
review
want to
will
once
be
again.
up.
I do want to play it, but that's gonna be my response for many games. Like I do want to get around to it, but there's also like
That's
10 other games.
basically everybody here. It's like
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
want to play all these games. We just don't have the time for
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
But yeah,
I think
I'd
And
say
if
that's
I
the
were to
understandable.
like, I haven't played any Atelier games. If I were to play one, it would either be Yumiya or Ryza. Just like Reslieriana, it has this weird semi-attachment to the mobile game, even though this isn't that. So yeah, especially in I&II this year, and Yumiya was pretty well received. It's like I would just start there, like if for someone new to the series.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you're confused about where to start, RPGsite.net has a nice beginner's guide to the Atelier.
Recommend starting with
Yeah.
the Arlen games with the stressful deadlines, please.
I think I had enough deadlines this week to deal with them in game as well.
Well, you got more deadlines now.
So any other features you want to mention on your end, Mikhail? Before
Yeah,
we do
sure.
the
So, since we spoke about tactics already, I had access to the PC and the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions of the game. A bit disappointed that they have like no mouse controls on Switch 2 while they do have them on PC. So the Switch 2 version feels a bit, I don't know what to say. Like it feels like a last minute thing which they were planning to have this on like PS5, Xbox, and maybe PC and Switch 1. And since it was like Switch 2 is out, they said let's do that also because it both Switch 1 and Switch 2 run kind of the same, except I had like extra performance issues on Switch 2, weirdly enough, on the world map. Like when you're moving the cursor on the world map, there's like a random hitching and freezing on Switch 2,
Oh,
which is
weird.
not there at all on PC, like on either handheld which I have. Switch 1 has it, but it's less, like not as bad as on Switch 2, weirdly. So I hope this is something they fix. No mouse controls. Uh, the PC version is fantastic. It's capped at 60, but it is fantastic. Like I was able to run it at like 4K 60 on Steam Deck when I was playing it on my TV and stuff. So it is absolutely well optimized and stuff. And yeah, that's tactics. I will be working on, I say will be because I'm still waiting for access to the PS5 and Xbox versions. But I am going to do something where I look at the PS1 tactics, War of the Lions, PSP, War of the Lions, iOS, and then the Ivalice Chronicles Classic and like the new mode. It's like a big thing, but it'll happen at some point. And Hades 2, I did a comparison for that as well. Like I said, I feel like Supergiant was a bit conservative with how they shipped it on Switch 2, because if a game can do like 1080, 120, or even like 144 FPS on Steam Deck, I feel like Switch 2 should be able to go a bit higher. But yeah, if you have a 120 hertz display, you can play Hades 2 at 1080, 120 FPS on Switch 2 docked, and it feels amazing to do that. Good rumble also if you have a Pro controller too. So yeah, those are the main like comparison and tech features I did. We'll get to the interview in a bit.
Adam, there's a few features on the site from other contributors that I believe you edited. So we have 2 reviews and 1 preview. So I don't know if there's one of these you want to talk about first, or you want me just to review one.
The one that comes to mind is we were invited to do a Pokemon preview event for Pokemon Legends ZA in New York City. Unfortunately, none of our regular staff members live in New York City, so I had to get a freelancer to write for us, and it's actually someone that is a friend to some of us on the site, Will Berger. You met him at Summer Game Fest, didn't you, Josh?
I first met him at PAX West,
Oh.
I think last year. I
Oh,
was at
you
PAX
met him
West,
before
the
then.
previous
Oh.
year. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
But yeah, so Will's a friend of the site, and he lives in New York, and he was like, heck yeah, I'll check out Pokemon ZA. And his write-up, I think, is actually pretty fun. So he's not like a huge Pokemon fan. He called himself like a lapsed Pokemon fan, and he's like, Gold and Silver are excellent. Ruby and Sapphire, bad. But he was kind of just
So he's
coming
one of
to-
those OG guys.
Yeah, but he was coming into this game, kind of interested, but not really up to date on Pokemon. And it was kind of like his experience with the game. And there's like this whole like saga with a Houndoom in the game that was threatening and harassing him, and then eventually became one of his Pokemon. But yeah, kind of talking about the game's regular real-time battles. It seems like it was a little bit more of a longer demo than what Josh got to play at PAX this year.
Yeah.
But talking about the city structure, the real-time battles is of course like those are the 2 key things of the game, right? That set it apart. It's all set in one city, so you're no longer traveling a world, right? And it's got some of the similar elements that like Arceus introduced with its changes, but even more now with like the real time elements. And one of the things he brought up was, for example, in traditional Pokemon, it's turn based, and you can decide to use an item on a turn, right, instead of attacking. But now, being more real time, he found himself using items like much more frequently, because it's no longer part of your turn structure where you choose to use an item or not. It's like everything's happening all at once, and a part of that is items, right? Just kind of one thing that's got a different flavor now with just the way it's structured. So yeah, just kind of a fun little kind of impressions of a demo that he got to play in New York. So that was fun to have him write that for us. I'm trying to remember what other articles went up this.
We have Paul did a review and Scott did a review.
Yeah, so Scott also reviewed Lost Soul Aside. So this game's a month old now, but Lost Soul Aside came out right around PAX West at the end of August, and there were no early copies for it. I think we talked about this, and so the timing was a little bit awkward with PAX West, so that's why it's a little bit late of a review. And Scott's review more or less boils down to Lost Soul Aside tries to follow the rule of cool, where it does things just because it thinks it's cool, whether it's in the story or in the characters or in combat. And he's like, well, some of the combat stuff is actually pretty fun. There's a lot of other parts of the game where it's just like sometimes being cool just doesn't cut it, in terms of the structure or some story stuff that just kind of doesn't work out. And he gave it a 5, so a pretty low score, pretty mediocre score. The combat was the one thing that he said was, if you're gonna sift out anything that is worthwhile here, it's that. But yeah, just kind of a here are the things that
Better
didn't
than
really
James'
land for
score.
him.
I mean, James gave it a 4, I think.
Wait, James gave it a 4 at restart.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's I saw his review. It was like a 4.
4 out of 5 or a 4 out of 10? Or
I remember it's like 4 out of 10.
okay. Yeah.
bad.
I kind of feel bad that like it was one of those games that like was like in development hell for a really long time, and there's been talks about like, hey, what happened, like what's the development history timeline of this game.
The
And it's
development
just-
history is insane. This guy lost everything to put this game out. His girlfriend, his like money,
His hair.
everything. It's time. It's like, was it worth it? Was it worth it?
I mean, hopefully, like like they were able to sell well enough to like continue on to operate as a studio. I think it's one of those things that like maybe should have started out small and then grow bigger instead of like kind of going for that big thing first. It's kind of build up to something big rather than start big.
They are updating it like quite a bit. So since I'm stuck with the Steam version because I bought it on GMG like an idiot and I couldn't refund it. So I see that, on the Steam news post every week, I see them push out like a patch which has like a lot of fixes, improvements and stuff. And I just decided I'll revisit it after a few months to see how it feels or whatever. But yeah, they are updating it quite a bit.
Whether they
on
have the
PC
2.0
and PS5.
update, you know how some developers are like,
Yeah.
man, this launched at a rough state. We'll have a 2.0 update several months down the line that'll soft relaunch of the game. It's totally awesome.
I think the one positive takeaway out of the game is when I bought the game on GMG, I bought the deluxe edition because I'm an idiot who always wants the DLC. Soundtrack is good, so I have that on my phone and I listen to that. So yeah.
Yeah, so the other review is Wander Stars, which was written by Paul Scully. This is kind of an indie game from Fellow Traveler and Paper Castle Games that is basically all about 90s anime, 90s shonen anime specifically, and is kind of got that sort of kind of charm and aesthetic and style to it, which Paul was a fan of. He grew up in that era. But also in terms of its combat, like the combat in this game is turn-based, but rather than picking like specific attacks, you pick like an adjective, a type of attack, and like special like words. So rather than doing like a normal attack, you pick like super punch fire or whatever, and it just like combines your words together to like create abilities. And he was saying like it was just kind of a fun kind of experimental combination of words that like fits the 90s anime tone and whatnot. It's like as I understand it, it's like 10 separate little story arcs that you go through that loosely tie together, but not like a big epic story. It's more just kind of like a serialized anime. And he said that one thing he was disappointed in is that like while there are some like animated cutscenes and whatnot, most of the game is actually more like visual novel style, which being indie scale, that's obviously more conducive to a lower budget, resource type of project. But he gave it a 7 out of 10. So, things fun to be found, things that he liked. Is it absolutely like a top tier game? Maybe not, but like for people like him who kind of appreciate this sort of aesthetic and style, he enjoyed it.
I think the last feature is the interview they put up, Mikhail, for Final Fantasy VII Remake on Switch 2.
Yeah, so I had a chance to talk to Naoki Hamaguchi, and this was for the Switch 2 and Xbox versions. And this was I did the interview a few days after they announced that when they announced the date for the game, which was on January, is coming to both Switch 2 and Xbox Series and brackets Xbox on PC, which is what they call Play Anywhere now, the Microsoft Store on Windows, on January 22nd, 2026. And after they announced the date, they also confirmed that the full trilogy will be multi-platform, which means Rebirth will be coming to Switch 2 and Xbox platforms, and Part 3 will also be coming to Switch 2 and Xbox platforms and PC. There's no clarity on whether everything is going to happen simultaneously for Part 3 or not, but it will be there eventually. And they also announced this streamlined progression feature, which is essentially like cheats and toggles or boosters, which Square Enix has been adding to some games. But like, if you do you remember how when they brought Final Fantasy X to PC, they added these boosters which they never brought to any console platform ever. They still aren't there.
Yeah.
So like so you have like when they did FF10 10 to HD remastered, it was on Vita and PS3 first, then it came to PS4. The difference over there is they let you toggle between the new soundtrack and the original soundtrack. Otherwise, it was essentially just like 720 to 1080 on PS4, nothing more. Then it got ported to PC, still 30 FPS, but they added like more features and boosters and cheats and stuff. Never ported back to anything. A few years after that, I don't remember if it was a year or two only, but it came to Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. None of those PC cheats or whatever came over, so it was just based on the PS4 version. This was Final Fantasy X, but for Final Fantasy 12, what happened is it happened in a weirder way. You had PS4 as the base, then it came to PC with like frame rate and performance and visual improvements and additional cheats. Then it came to Switch and Xbox with even more cheats and stuff. And like the license board reset stuff, which was not on other platforms.
I was just about to mention that was
like a year later.
That was the biggest addition for Final Fantasy 12. I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but Final Fantasy 12.
No, this Zodiac, is all for a reason. This is all for a reason.
Yeah, Zodiac. Well, I just want to point out that Zodiac Age, when it first came out, a lot of people were like, "Man, I wish you could like change your licenses, because otherwise." People, they really fret over like, man, what if I make the wrong choice and I pick the wrong class or I pick the wrong whatever. And then eventually on like the Switch port, they added the license reset. And then even later after that, they did eventually backport all of those adjustments to all the versions. So like if you get, maybe not the PS4 version, but I think the PS4 version, but like for example, if you get the PC version of the Zodiac Age now, it has everything. As far as I understand.
No, they did it for the PS4 as well.
Oh,
like
okay.
now all the Zodiac versions are the same, except you have like some performance differences.
Right.
So like PC and there's something with the frame rate as well. I think if you play at above 30 FPS, some of the animations are still faster than they should be on every platform. There's like some weird stuff with that. But anyway, going back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, integrate the interview. So there's this streamlined progression feature which lets you essentially, when you start a game or in the options, you can toggle that you always have max HP, max MP, your limit gauge is always full, ATP gauge is always full. You can enable like 2x and 3x EXP and AP gain, and these are all things you can just enable and disable like seemingly whenever you want. And these are like really good additions. I believe they added something to Remake Integrate called Advanced Start Mode to PlayStation and Steam already, so that people could play that quickly before they get into Rebirth. But this is just like a straight on cheat menu or something you can access from from like the in-game menu. I asked whether this is going to be brought over to PlayStation 5 and PC, and he said that like a lot of the responses are like kind of boilerplate, that if there is demand we'll bring it. But I was pleased that there's no straight up no for a lot of things. Like sometimes you just hear that there are no plans for it, but here they said that he said I'm not able to confirm anything at like this time for Rebirth specifically, because when part 3 is coming out, you'd assume they'd bring these cheats to Rebirth, but he said no plans for that. But there are plans to bring the streamlined progression into the PlayStation 5 and PC versions of Remake itself. So that was one interesting takeaway. Then the other thing I asked about is amiibo support, and I'm surprised no one brought that up, because you have like the Smash Brothers series has 2 Cloud and 1 Sephiroth amiibo. It would have been like a nice home run to add support for those for the Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, but as of now, there's no plans, he said. Out of the other things I asked is, I was surprised at how he was aware of the Steam Deck optimization and stuff, and he said that the response has been good for them for both Remake and Rebirth on Steam Deck, and they have data that shows a lot of their players are playing the Steam version on Steam Deck, so that's interesting given Rebirth is not really a great experience on Steam Deck. But this kind of takes me back to, I think, March or was it April of this year, where when Valve put out their stats for the most played games on Steam Deck, one of them had Monster Hunter Wilds in the top 5, and I was like, why would you torture yourself by doing that? Like, that's like a 10 FPS game on Steam Deck or something. So yeah, I guess people are willing to tolerate some of these things to play portable. I also asked him about the Magic the Gathering collaboration, because the Switch 2 version has a physical release keycard thing, which has a Magic the Gathering booster included. So a friend of mine who's hardcore into Magic is literally buying this just for that booster. So I assume it's good value, and maybe it's like the equivalent of when, you know how you buy Grand Blue Fantasy physicals and you get codes for some in-game stuff, which I've given to Chao before. Maybe it's one of those deals. I don't follow Magic the Gathering enough to know how much this is worth or not, but that's something. And the most important question from the interview is Naoki Hamaguchi likes his coffee black, just like I do.
I'm drinking black coffee right now.
Good taste.
And then Mikhail's gonna freak out when I say I drink a double.
I haven't actually understood what that means because in different
It's a Canadian
countries,
term.
apparently,
It's a term for double cream and double sugar. Like,
Oh,
like,
okay, I see.
Mikhail's like just
I have
gave
to
him Mikhail just gave Chow a stink eye over the internet. Now it's like,
it's like this
I don't need to
guy.
give him a stink eye. I can just gift him Chrono Cross on Steam. But yeah.
Oh god, please get that game out of my box.
when I think
yeah,
of double
that
double,
was
I
the
think about the
interview.
In-N-Out burger order.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the interview about Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. I am curious to see how they handle Rebirth and how they handle, like, you know, just the marketing lead up into Part 3, because a lot is riding on that. And if they haven't said anything about Part 3, like we don't even know the name or anything, but if they aren't able to get it on all consoles at the same time, I hope they are able to at least do like PS5 and Steam together, because you just lose out with your marketing and mind space when you like stagger these launches beyond anything. So we'll see what happens when they eventually get to announce that. But January 2026 is when Remake Integrate comes to Xbox, Windows Store, and Nintendo Switch too. And they said that in another interview with Hayes on Inverse, which I wrote about in a news story, they are planning a demo at the end of the year. No date given. If I had to guess, I would say the demo will be a shadow drop during the Game Awards, but this is purely speculation.
Yeah, I think the best place for Final Fantasy Remake Part 3 would be obviously just multi-platform from the get-go. Maybe Switch 2 later, because I don't know how much of an undertaking that is. But it's anyone's guess at this point. So thank you for covering the kind of the intricacies for Final Fantasy Remake on Switch 2 and Xbox. It's interesting to see like those cheats on them, because I still associate those like in-game cheats with like their legacy titles, like stuff that's 10 plus years old, or maybe even 15 plus years old. To see it on Remake, I'm like, that's still a contemporary game, and you have all of like the built-in cheats. So it feels weird, but there is the precedent for it. From, like,
And you also have to imagine that, like, moving forward, you know, like when they bring Rebirth to those platforms, definitely a possibility they'll implement those as well.
Hey, if Rebirth had those in-game cheats for some of those brutal simulator challenges at the end, I would have turned them on.
I would use it. I would get my platinum right now if I got those cheats on.
Fighting Odin in round 9 of like a 90-minute, I'm exaggerating, like simulator marathon just for him to do Zansetsuken.
Yeah. Instant death right there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
That's so funny. You guys are like, yeah, I'm gonna definitely use it. Hell yeah!
Like cheats.
Look,
like,
they should add cheats for They should add cheats for the mini games. The fighting game.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Hard mode, Cactar, whatever's, or
It's
Goblin.
like, fuck the infinite HP. Give me the cheat codes for the fighting game.
Give me the instant dolphin race win.
Oh, you guys are funny.
Anyways, I love the mini games in Rebirth, unironically, but they're challenging. So I think it covers all of our features. We had a lot this week. So obviously, like 4 reviews: Final Fantasy Tactics, Hades 2, Wonder Stars, Lost Soul Aside, preview with Pokemon, interview with Naoki Hamaguchi and Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and then several like other Mikhail specials with the Hades 2, Final Fantasy Tactics, Atelier, like hardware rundowns. So lots on rpgsite.net this week, as expected for TGS week. But in terms of TGS news, now that we're kind of going to rotate into the news, back half of the podcast, like we kind of teed up, not a lot of like world-shaking, big, huge events, but a couple of interesting things, a couple of interesting follow-ups. The one that we're going to lead off with was the one that was basically leaked a few days beforehand, but we got the final official release and reveal of Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties. We'll go into what that is. So, have we all? I know Adam hasn't. Have we all played Yakuza 3? I have. Josh
I
has. I
have.
believe Mikhail has.
I bought the
Yeah, I
game, but I did not open it or touched it. I just keep hearing like, oh, they cut out these content, and I didn't even know what the hell it was. I think it was like a hostess club or something like that. And then I didn't touch the game after that. And I actually started with Yakuza 4. I think that's when I played it for real. I think.
Okay.
So, Josh, do you want to tee up the Kiwami
Yeah.
3 announcement?
Yeah, so this was like you mentioned earlier. This was they even acknowledged on the broadcast. Like, yeah, we know it leaked a while back. So that's the first thing they announced at the summit was Yakuza Kiwami 3 coming to PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, Switch 2, and PC on February 12th. So just a few months away. And as part of this as well, there's also like almost a Gaiden style story arc with its main antagonist Mine called Dark Ties as part of it. So Yakuza Kiwami 3, which is a remake of Yakuza 3, and like this other side story thing that you can boot up when you boot up the game, Dark Ties, which is a whole brand new campaign thing, which stars Yoshitaka Mine from Yakuza 3, and that delves more to his backstory, and he has his own separate gameplay system that we'll go into as well. So this is an interesting game in terms of like it's been a while since we've had a new Yakuza Kiwami title. Kiwami 2 was quite a while ago, and people always wondered like, are they going to do a Kiwami 3? Yakuza 3 is wildly like majority of people who played Yakuza 3 don't really like Yakuza 3. I first didn't like it when I initially played the PS3 version years ago, and as I've replayed it and gotten older over time, I've begun to appreciate it more. But I understand why people didn't like it. There's many people will pick and choose of like what they didn't like about it. Like some of it is like the fighting game, or not the fighting, the battle system in it, because the enemy AI behavior in it. They were very defensive. A lot of blocking. A lot of people didn't like that. Enemies like blocked really like quite a bit in that game. So enemy encounters were longer than usual compared to past titles, because you really had to kind of work to get in on your opponents. People didn't like the intro because a lot of it is managing the orphanage. As Kiryu at the beginning of this game is managing an orphanage run by him, Haruka, and then like these, kind of developing like the familial bonds that Kiryu and Haruka develop with the other kids at the orphanage here, until like the real story starts opening up as kind of Kiryu is kind of roped back into the Yakuza business, and is and the blackmail over the orphanage becomes like a huge thing over the entire series, now that I think about it. But kind of the roots of that is established in Yakuza 3, and there are things around it that like people kind of didn't like as well, but those are the main two issues on it. So they're addressing a lot of these, like the fighting system is revamped. Obviously in Kiwami they have two fighting styles now with Kiryu, while in the original Yakuza 3 he still had like his like basic fighting style. Oh, there's no style switching at all. It was just like kind of his base Dragon of Dojima move set that people who played these games know at the back of their hand. And so with this one, he still has that fighting style, but he has like a new fighting style, which is like is centered around like fighting with weapons that you can switch like to different weapons as part of like this new. I forgot what they call it. It's like okay, like it's very Okinawan based weaponry, but I forgot what the exact terminology or what weapon style this is. Before I go any further, I know Mikhail's been wanting to speak, so I'll let you go, Mikhail.
Yeah, so there's some, like, before talking about what they're adding over here, I just wanted to bring up one thing. So when they did Yakuza Kiwami 1, the way they sold it in Japan and Asia initially is it was a remake of Yakuza 1, and they also had a demo as a first print bonus for Yakuza 6, but it wasn't really an actual in-game part of Yakuza 6. It was more of a demo for the Dragon engine at that time. It's called like the Blue Jacket demo. It's like infamous in the fan base or whatever. just to show what they were doing with the new engine and new visuals for PS4. That was like a first print bonus. With Yakuza Kiwami 2, it was a remake of Yakuza 2. They cut some stuff. Some people were not happy. I haven't actually played Yakuza 2 to know like what they cut and how significant it is, because I just played Kiwami 2. But Yakuza Kiwami 2 had this very nice addition which had you playing as Majima. It was called like the Majima Saga. But it was essentially like 1.5 hour, if I remember correctly, of new gameplay and story content where you play as him and you have cutscenes across these short chapters. It was just called Yakuza Kiwami 2. This Majima Saga thing was like this bonus value add to the package. It wasn't a separate game per se. With Yakuza Kiwami 3, what they're doing is it's a remake of Yakuza 3. They're probably going to make some changes and cuts, which we'll learn about soon. But one thing I notice is, if you know how they've called it Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties in English, the Japanese name is actually called Yakuza Kiwami 3, and the Dark Ties part is actually a Gaiden. It's literally Yakuza Gaiden Dark Ties or whatever.
I didn't
that
actually check out
translates
the Japanese name, but I have to imagine Ryuga Gotoku something. Not
Yeah,
called
so
Yakuza
basically it
there.
has Gaiden. The Dark Ties part has the actual Gaiden phrase in the
Okay.
name. So this tells me that it's not going to be like 1.5 hour long, because like how long was Yakuza, like the man who erased his name? I think it was like what, 10 hours or something, or
Yeah,
was it
yeah, you could beat
shorter? I
it.
don't know.
Yeah, it's like about like 7-10 hours depending on how much like side
Yeah,
stuff you
so
did in it.
I
Yeah.
I hope, because this is like, this has the Gaiden, it's not just like 1 hour or 2 hours long, maybe like 5-6 hours, because this is essentially the big draw in the package for me. Like, I've played Yakuza 3. There are some things I don't like about it, like Kiryu bending down and taking 3 hours to pick up any shiny on the road and all. Like, that's something I joke about quite often, because I Yakuza 3, I played it on PS4 directly after playing like Kiwami 2 and 6 and stuff like that. So it was like going back in time and playing like an old game with 60 FPS or whatever. Some stuff I didn't like, too much blocking and all that stuff. We've like, these are
Yeah,
known issues with the
it's
game, but
definitely a big like you've experienced this too, Brian. When you're going through the Yakuza series, going from Kiwami 2 to Yakuza 3, you were
Yeah,
like,
I
okay.
played them in like not release order, in chronological order. So 0, 1, 2, and then 3 is always the big, like, all right, get for the step down. And I acclimate pretty quickly when playing older games, but still, it's a bit of a whiplash. And just two quick things. Reminder that like Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, also in Japan, had the the Gaiden footing.
Yes.
So
yeah,
only
that's true.
the man who forgot his name or whatever had that, maintained that in English. Where the other ones, I guess, for the English side, they're moving away from that, which I just wish the English naming was more consistent, because now that's like
You know,
Yakuza Like a Dragon instead of 7, they don't put the 8 in Infinite Wealth.
I 100% agree
Yeah.
with you, because when I thought if they ever redid the older games or whatever, I thought now is the correct time. Like, if you re-release Yakuza 0, you can call it Like a Dragon Origins or something like that, or call it Like a Dragon 0, because that's what they're going with for, I don't know what. Like, they did Yakuza Like a Dragon to get people accustomed to that, and Yakuza 8 was literally Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and then you had Like a Dragon the Man Who Erased His Name, and then you had Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. So they seem to not be willing to go all the way. So now we're back with, not only back with Kiryu being the focus of a lot of these games because they are remakes of his games, but you also have the Yakuza name. So I don't know. I just felt like if you had Like a Dragon Zero and you were redoing the games, re-releasing them, doing new localizations, now is the time to just call them Like a Dragon. I don't. It's just disappointing that they aren't willing to go all
Yeah,
the
I
way.
have
But
really
yeah,
have
like,
no idea. They never like figured it out on like what they're gonna do with the English in the English naming convention of this series. Like we thought they had it, and then they just continually over time just they're as confused as we are. It feels like with how their naming convention is
but
on
yeah.
this.
So with Yakuza Kiwami 3, my big takeaway with it is, one, I'm excited to play the game again, because I despite all my complaints with it, I keep forgetting the CIA guy's name, because I call him Mr. Anderson, like from a Matrix meme or whatever. I forgot his name. He's like
Richardson.
when they showed him. Sorry, what?
Richardson.
I think it's Richards.
Yeah, Andre Richardson or something like that. So when he was the bartender in one of those games, that was like, oh, they're gonna do Kiwami, right? Because they have his model in the Dragon engine, and yeah, that's actually what happened. So I'm excited to revisit it and see how I feel. What I'm not excited about is some of the model changes. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, so
It's
the big
interesting
elephant,
because you go first and then I'll go second. Yeah.
yeah, the big elephant in the room, like that people have been noticing when they first debuted the trailer without anything, they're like, "Hey, where's Rikia? Rikia is a pretty important character in Yakuza 3," and people are like, "Where's Rikia?" And then they after that debut trailer at the summit, they revealed, hey, several of these characters that were prominent in Yakuza 3 are getting whole new recasts, and this is nothing new for the franchise. Which I'll touch upon, but Rikiya, Nakahara, and Hamazaki all have recasts, so they have new actors, new voices, and entirely new models. They look nothing alike from their original um, actors, and this is nothing new for the RGG studio in general. People remember Tanimura getting replaced in Yakuza 4 because the actor for that got like falsely accused for cocaine. Judgment 1, I believe, also had a recast of one of its antagonists for an actual cocaine crime. Um, and Like a Dragon Ishin replaced a whole bunch of its characters with more popular characters, well-known characters in the West, especially with a lot of the Shinsengumi members, like a lot of the original Shinsengumi members in its original release were actually filled up by like characters throughout like 3 and 4, but they were lesser known, I guess, less popular in the West than what they were replaced with in Ishin. Um, this one is a little bit perplexing because, if anything, I think when people were thinking about like if they were going to do the Kiwami 3, people would think that Kanda's VA would be the one to get replaced because Kanda's VA it actually did have like real life crimes dealing, and because he had like real life dealings with the Yakuza, and so he kind of got out of the limelight for a couple of years, and I think now he's like a YouTuber and some shit. But that's kind of getting to the weeds. But it's just like it'd be these recasts are kind of weird because like those particular characters and actors get recast, but not like the actual other actor that got into real life crimes that didn't get recast. So it's kind of like a weird situation on that front, but also because like a lot like Rikia, for example, had like a very distinct model, had a very distinct like he was designed with the Okinawa um locale in mind. So his original model and actor really portrayed like that Okinawa setting and Okinawa manners and the way they characterize him. Like he looks a little bit like a dork and acts like a little bit like a dork, but it's
And
very
I like
but it's
not judging
very
anyone by their appearances, but
yeah
like he just
yeah
didn't look like the other Yakuza. He didn't have like slick
exactly
back hair. It was more like curly frizzy. He just looked like a different, like had a different upbringing or different, and that fit the character. Now he kind of just looks like a different person entirely, which of course that's what it is. But it feels weird returning to the game, being
yeah.
like, oh, that's Rikia. That's not my boy.
Yeah, so it's like it's not to say anything bad about like the new actor, but it's just like it's like it's something that we kind of all have to accept that like RGG Studio just does. There's nothing new, and the one saving grace is like at least the original version of Yakuza 3 is widely available on
Mhm.
a lot of modern platforms. So
Yeah.
you can always return to the original if you want to. That's easily accessible on it. So you know, um, it's definitely gonna change up the game for me, definitely. But I'm open minded in that on that end. The things that I do like in the Yakuza Kiwami 3 that they did share is like, hey, they're good, like that for better or for worse. I personally like the orphanage setting and the slow beginning of Yakuza 3. It's something that I've grown to appreciate over time, though. It's not something that I liked immediately at my first playthrough. Is hey, they're gonna have like more orphanage activities when you're like managing the orphanage. You'll have like little mini games of like preparing food for the kids, having more interactions with the kids, doing like there's like more stuff to do to like kind of interact with the other with the kids that have like mini game elements to it that they showed off. Um, and also there's going to be like new scenes added into it. You also have a little bit of a outfit change for Kiryu, where he doesn't have like that like pinkish Hawaiian shirt anymore. It's like it's been replaced by like a darker black and gold Hawaiian shirt. I was like, okay, sure, why not?
I think the DLC has the original shirt, which is kind of not
That's
great.
what the fuck? Fucked up. Yeah, I didn't even know that. Jesus. But yeah, I mean that's for Kiwami 3, like in general. I don't know if you want to talk have anything more to add for Kiwami 3 specifically and not Dark Ties yet, Mikhail.
So no, besides the fact that the Gaiden subtitle over there has me hopeful. It's a bit more. I'm just like thinking about what they're gonna change with, not just like how it has the typical DLC stuff where they're gonna do costumes and all, and they showed some screenshots where I believe they're gonna have like the dress up feature, like Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which had quite an interesting. It was like that picked up from Gaiden as well, right? Where Gaiden was the first game where they added like costume customization and stuff, like proper, where you could like change specific parts and stuff. So I think that's gonna be here, but Dark Ties, I don't know what to expect. But before that, do we know if they are redoing the Japanese voices for Kiwami 3? Like, are they going to re-record Kuroda's voice for Kiryu? Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah, they usually always do. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like wondering how they do that, because like if they get a lot of the same actors back, are they like, how are they going to sound? Because it's been it's been more than 10 years, right, since Yakuza 3.
Mine's voice actor was really funny in that the song, because he kept talking about that. It's like, man, it's been a long time since I did Mine's voice, and my voice has definitely changed since that time. It's much like deeper now, like even Mine's VA was like kind of like perplexed that he has to like portray this character that he did many years ago, and his voice has changed since then because of just the sheer time span since it's been. So that's a funny point that you brought up, that you might have reminded me of that. Like poor Mine's VA, because Mine's VA is back and doing this, but that he has to now voice a brand new thing altogether where he's the main protagonist, and that's all voiced. Like I love Mine's VA, and Mine, and like they mentioned this too in the when they're talking to the voice actors. Like Mine is a pretty popular like Yakuza character even after all these years, especially like the Japanese community, especially like among like the female fan base. Like Japanese female fans of Yakuza really love Mine, and like they always talk about Mine. And I've seen here and there too, even in the West, of like, yeah, I'm a fan of Mine. I'm not a Japanese girl, but I have a certain love and affection for Mine.
He's very charismatic. That for a game that has like, so Yakuza 3, my very quick impressions is that I love the Okinawa vibe, but it has a lot of like the biggest pitfalls of the series in terms of contrivances, and there's also a weird thing where a lot of characters that have seemingly definitive ends in Yakuza 3 show up later in the series. So if you've played like 7 or 8, it's interesting to talk about, and I don't even know if I want to like go into more detail. It's not like a spoiler anymore. It's weird. But then Mine, despite only appearing in Yakuza 3 and having not a ton of screen time, like he's a one and done antagonist, he's just like so charismatic. He's like, I don't know, good looking. I'll admit that. He's a good foil to Kiryu. And I think my favorite part about this Dark Ties like prequel leading up to the events of this game, I guess he's also a bit of a foil to Daigo as well, is the fact that it shows a little bit of his history as like a venture capitalist. And it reminds me of the scene in like Spider-Man where Norman Osborn's like, I built this company. And it just reminded me of that. Where he gets kicked out by the board, and then it has to turn to the underground to like reestablish himself. I'm like, oh, so he's Yakuza's Norman Osborn. There we go.
But yeah, but they showed off like when they revealed Dark Ties. This is like we mentioned, is going to be focused on Mine and also Kanda. Kanda's a pretty prominent character, because he's part of like Mine's backstory and like kind of his sworn oath brother and all that stuff. Daigo Dojima also is a prominent character, along with the new character Shinpei Kari. That's kind of funny, because I was like wondering, it's like, how the hell is Mine gonna play then? And Mine is funny because like he kind of has like unique mechanics in the sense that like he gets to interact with enemies in a completely different way. He still has fisticuffs, but like he has stuff like enemy step where he can like jump off of opponents into like another opponent, and so like he's just kind of like jumping off of opponents to like get better positioning. It can also unleashes like his inner darkness, like an inner like darkness awakening, almost like a devil trigger from Devil May Cry, sort of deal. So I was like, man, that's funny as hell. Where like I'm sure they weren't like influenced by Devil May Cry, but there definitely are some parallels to like some like Devil May Cry stuff with Mine when he showed off his gameplay. But they're kind of keeping the whole mini game lineup for like at least Dark Ties a little bit under wraps. That we do know that there's karaoke, so you do get to hear Mine sing like Bakamitai, for example, and other karaoke songs. But we don't know too much outside of like what other side activities there are. For Kiwami 3, they're bringing back stuff like bowling, which hasn't been in the series for forever. I don't know when the last time there was bowling in the Yakuza games. They're bringing that back. And they also mentioned like they had to rebuild like the Okinawa setting from the ground up from scratch in Kiwami 3. They couldn't like rely on a previous release to bring over assets, obviously, and they also had to like had to add an challenge of like having to recreate that city based on the time period it was representing, which I think was like so they had to like recreate like the 2006 era Okinawa, I think. So it's they
Yeah,
had
the
a
time period stuff is going to be interesting to see how they handle it, because
yeah
I feel like they've lost some of our trust with how they handle old subjects and old time stuff, where I believe a friend of mine who has been with the series from the beginning, he's so into it that he compares like billboards and how they change across games, and he's like,
Mhm.
oh, in this Kiwami they showed this thing, but this didn't actually exist back then in Japan, so I hope they fix it in a patch, and like that hardcore into it. So I need to discuss this trailer with him when they show more of it, because I believe they've just shown the announcement trailer and then they've released the short combat trailer for the Kiwami 3 part of it. So we'll have to see how that goes. Uh yeah, is there
yeah
anything else you want to talk about when it comes to the story in Kiwami 3? Because they'll definitely do like mini games. They like I know people who've literally bought Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii for some of the arcade games added. So I feel like they know that's a good draw. So they might bring back something interesting for this one.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to know until they actually announce stuff. Like I don't want to drag on the segment too long because there's a lot of other stuff to get to. So I think we'll just leave it at that for now, based on like what they've announced. And then
Yeah.
we'll circle back to it when they reveal
Yeah.
more. It's coming out in a few months.
But then the last thing with Yakuza is the the physical releases are kind of bizarre. I don't know if you've like looked at the news
No, I
around them yet.
haven't. I haven't seen them yet.
So so what happened with Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is North America got a PlayStation 5 and Xbox physical, nothing else, obviously, because you don't do PC physicals in North America. Europe got a PS5 physical and a PC Steelbook code and box physical, no Xbox physical. So I
Okay.
thought this was interesting because this was like one of the like Sega did this with Metaphor as well, where Metaphor got a PC Steelbook physical and it got a PlayStation 5 disc version. And they seem to be continuing that with Kiwami 3 also. So Kiwami 3 is not getting a Xbox physical outside North America, but it's getting a PC Steelbook. They've not revealed what that is, but it is getting that. PlayStation has a physical everywhere. And Switch 2, yeah, which is that's one thing we didn't bring up. Kiwami 3 is simultaneous multiplat. It's on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Switch
Yeah,
2,
I mentioned
Xbox
it.
Series X,
Yeah.
and PC. So this is like the first Yakuza game which is coming to Switch alongside other platforms. So that's good to see. Will be interesting to see how that port plays out. And the other announcement which they randomly made at the end is that Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is coming to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Steam on December 8th. No upgrade path for existing owners, no save data transfer for existing owners. Not great to have that, because I thought the worst case would be them handling it like you know how Bandai Namco handled Dark Souls Remastered. Everyone who owned Prepare to Die edition got like a 50% off upgrade, and they could obviously save data didn't carry over, but they could like buy the new version and still keep the old version after they delisted it. Sega's not said anything about delisting Yakuza 0, but if I had to speculate, I assume it's getting delisted. And to because I'm so confident in it myself, I actually bought Yakuza 0 on GOG just to own it over there also, because I own it on Steam already. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, if you not paid attention to it, it's the Switch 2 exclusive which came out in June, which has some new cutscenes. It has more languages added like efix, because the original was just English. It has an English dub option. It has a dogshit online multiplayer mode which you should not care about, and it was a $50 release when Yakuza 0 on every other platform was 20. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is coming to PS5, Series X, and PC for $50 as well in December. And at the same time, they are doing new versions of Kiwami 1 and 2 for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And Steam is getting an upgrade to add the new language options. So those were like the random announcements they made towards the end of the RGG Summit Direct showcase thing which they had. And this leads me into the other confusing physical package thing which Sega is doing. So Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is getting a PlayStation 5 physical everywhere, but Xbox is only in North America. But for Kiwami 1 and 2, North America gets a dual pack bundle for PS5 and Xbox. But for Europe, they're doing this thing called a 20th anniversary edition of Yakuza, which is called the Yakuza Series 20th anniversary edition for PS5 and Steam, Steelbook, 0 Director's Cut, Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2. So yeah, sorry, muted myself. So they have a lot of retail and digital releases coming out for the Yakuza series from November to February, because November is when Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2 are coming to Nintendo Switch 2. Then a month later, they're getting ported to PS5 and Series X, and Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is coming to non-Nintendo platforms. And then 2 months later, Kiwami 3 is coming to everything. So, a lot.
Yeah, I mean, good on them for continuing to like expand it to other platforms. But I think the director's cut thing is kind of really being mishandled really badly. That really sucks. That like, dude, you can't. It's so restrictive on how they're doing that. It's a little disgusting, but it's how it goes. Business is business.
And I think we've said it in passing, but I didn't lead it up at the beginning. But yeah, Kiwami 3 is already dated for February 12th of next year. So
Yep, mentioned
not too far away, all things. Yeah, I think we mentioned it, but just making sure we're putting it there as the stinger.
Okay.
So that was the big headline out of TGS, at least so far. Of course, it's still going on at the time of recording. A few other things. We have kind of 3 Monster Hunter related announcements here for a few different titles. So we have an extended version. I believe it's an extended version of the same trailer that we saw back at the Nintendo Direct for Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection that was announced a month ago. So they just kind of showed off an additional longer trailer there. I did not actually watch them side by side to see what was added between the two.
You don't really need to like it just kind of gives more story cutscenes and a little bit more of like the open world traversal being mounting on monsters type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the more interesting part was besides the trailer, there was actually like in the Capcom stream itself, they had like I think the director or producer like actually go through, hey, this is like the mechanics that we're adding to this game. Like they went over the exploration and how that's being handled and how the battle system is being shown off, or how it, like the mechanics in it, and like I think the new battle mechanics or expanded battle mechanics in this new Monster Hunter Stories, it like feels like a really big step up from like the previous stories. So that sort of stuff was like the actual thing that's interesting, because I'm like, how do I play this game and what's the gameplay like? Okay, that looks better than the previous two. That sounds great.
And apparently this is on RE Engine instead of being empty framework like Monster Hunter Stories 1 and 2. Alex said this on the VGC podcast from earlier today, that this is RE Engine game. So it's going to be interesting to see how it ends up being, because it's a multi-plat game, right? The Monster Hunter Stories was 3DS and then ported to mobile and then ported to everything. and Monster Hunter Stories 2 was switched to an PC and then ported to PlayStation.
I don't know if it's
And
I don't know that 3DS to mobile to the original stories was ported to like other things. Like I don't think that's something that they could easily scale up. I think they have to redo a lot of that to make it even run on modern platforms. But two definitely for sure. Like
so yeah,
the first
Monster Hunter
stories was
Stories
a bigger
3.
undertaking.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I think the like, yeah, if you look at it just like cursory glance or whatever, you might like, at least even I thought this before I actually played them. I thought Monster Hunter Stories on, the new remaster which they did on Switch, PS4 and Steam together, I thought that was just a port of the mobile version, but they actually added a lot more geometry, better textures, better character models, and
Yeah.
also they
Yeah.
did like put work into that. And
Yeah, yeah.
just to quickly,
I supposed to say don't just say it's a port. That's the thing. That's all.
yeah, definitely. It is more than that. Closer to what we'd call a remaster. I think the PS4 generation has poisoned the remaster term because you had those 720/30 PS3 games that just got like 1080/30 or 1080/60 enhanced ports, which were called remaster. So yeah, like Monster Hunter Stories definitely like saw a lot of work from 3DS to mobile, and then again from mobile to when it got remastered and stuff. And Monster Hunter Stories 3 was always announced for everything, including Xbox. And what was announced at TGS is that Monster Hunter Stories 1 and 2 are coming to Xbox One and playable on Xbox Series X via backward compatibility. This is happening in November, and there's like a discounted bundle to buy them both, pre order it right now. So that's good. Like Xbox owners can like play the first two games leading up to 3. I assume it's not going to be essential because like you could play Monster Hunter Stories 2 without playing 1, but it
They're
is
all
good that they
standalone.
they
Yeah.
brought them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they brought them there. And for Monster Hunter Stories 3, the other announcement which happened at TGS is that they're doing 3 new amiibo, which I would be excited for these like in an ideal world, but the amiibo prices have gone up so much because of tariffs and stuff that they're now approaching what I used to pay for like Nendoroids and Figmas a few years ago. So I am not paying like $40 and $50 for like amiibo quality figures. But they did announce 3 amiibo: Wrath, Ratha V, and Rudy, I believe, is the Naviru equivalent of Monster Hunter Stories 3. And these 3 amiibo are releasing the same day as the game in March 2026. So yeah, that's the Stories 3 stuff. It definitely looks like a big visual and production step up over 2, which was already a big step up over the first one. So it is good to see like this, spin-off series get into its own, and it's getting like big push from Capcom. So I'm very happy with that because I love the series.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that's going to be important. Is like see how 3 handles now that's RE engine. Like hopefully it runs better on the world stuff. But moving on, the Monster Hunter Wilds, they showed off title update 3. It's like the main thing about it is their collaboration with FF14 and that fight with Omega. They showed off Alpha too. A lot of this FF14 stuff goes over my head. Don't really care much for it. I don't intend to return to the game until they uh, assure me that this game is actually running properly on PC. So a lot of this is whatever. But I think the important part out of all that is one that they're adding like some job classes from FF14, like the Dark Knight and Pictomancer in some form with the Monster Hunter Wilds. And they also have like little damage numbers FF14 style, which is okay, cool, whatever. They also teased on their roadmap that an Elder Dragon is coming in December, and then the last thing they showed off was that Elder Dragon is going to be Gogmazios, which coming to Wilds in December. So finally, Wilds, however many months after its initial release, is finally getting its Elder Dragon in December. And Gogmazios hasn't been in the series for quite a while, so it's a cool thing that it's returning.
Which game was GOG from? I've heard a lot, but I've never. I don't think GOG was in 4U or GU. Was he?
I think he was. He was an MH4 Ultimate, MH4U.
Oh, I played MH4U. I probably did run into them then. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do not remember much. And I know that I feel like I used to hear so much about Seregios and GOG together. So that makes sense that
Yeah.
both were in 4U then. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think it was only for you where it showed up. I don't think it showed up anywhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense because GU is the one which I played so much of on Switch, and I just assumed everything from prior games was there because GU has like some freaking 300 monsters or some shit. It feels like when you play it. So yeah,
So-
the one thing is, like you mentioned, the PC stuff. They did say that they, like, I mean, we really are at the stage where they should honestly, like, they need to hire people to fix it if they can't balance new content and optimization at the same time. But they did say that the update after September, or they've already started work on improving the CPU optimization and stuff. But I feel like they need to, like, just keep saying that we've improved it by this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, because
like
it's
I
too
don't care
late.
what they say until like people report back on it. Like I don't trust their word on it at all. I'll trust it more when people actually start talking about it being substantially improved at this point.
When Reddit and Steam are happy, you know you can go in because they'll have the highest standards.
Pretty much, yeah.
So that was the main headlines for Monster Hunter. So the information for Stories 3, the Stories 1 and 2 coming to Xbox in November, and then of course the Title 3 and Title 4 teas for Monster Hunter Wilds. Other things out of TGS, we kind of already talked about Fire Emblem Shadows. We'll maybe return to that on a later week once we have, one of our podcast participants go more deeper into it. A few other announcements, we'll just kind of touch on these headlines here. This was one of the Annapurna interactive games that they announced, People of Note. Kind of an interesting concept, not to be like a Boss Baby vibes sort of thing, but it reminds me a lot of K-pop Demon Hunters, if that was an RPG. So it's kind of like a stage singer dancer based turn-based RPG. It's got a fun style to it. I enjoyed watching that reveal trailer. It's planning for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and PC next year. So this is just the initial announcement that Annapurna Interactive and developer Iridium Studios are working on. We got a new announcement of a Aspire Interactive remaster for Deus Ex, which I have seen some of the comparisons on social media, and people have not been kind to what they have shown for a Deus Ex remaster coming out next year on February 5th. So not too long from now, 2026.
Yeah,
So
I'm very not a big fan of the aesthetic visuals they chose to rehaul this game. It's kind of I'm with the community that, like, hey, if you want to play Deus Ex, go get the original and download like mods that respect like that game's original art style and aesthetic.
I
And
saw
that's
something like you can get it for less than $1. Like
pretty
just
much.
get it for less than.
Yeah, and also because it's Aspire and this is something consistent with them, this release will probably introduce new bugs that weren't in the original as well, like their other remastered releases.
Because they did Neverwinter Nights 2, right? So
Yep. So I am not a fan of what they did to this game. I love the original Deus Ex, love it to pieces. This ain't it. This ain't it.
We have an announcement of a Dynasty Warriors 3 Complete Edition Remastered coming out for Xbox, Switch 2, PS5, and PC.
Yeah, on March 19th. This technically is an RPG, but it is related to,
We kind of covered Origins. It's kind
yeah,
of
we
right
did
on the
we
fringe.
covered Origins,
Yeah.
so yeah. And also because I'm heavily biased because Dynasty Warriors 3 is like one of my favorite PS2 games ever. So it's very, very cool to see that there's the Dynasty Warriors game that it is getting remastered. So it's called Complete Edition. This will have the base release and the XL content. It's being rebuilt on Unreal Engine 5, so I'm a little bit apprehensive on this release because it's been well documented about the ups and downs of Unreal Engine 5, mainly the downs. So hopefully, when it releases next March, it won't run into like any crazy performance issues on all the platforms. But who knows? Because there's also Unreal Engine 5 on Switch One, which is Mikhail, you and I have talked about this. It's gonna be a daunting task to see this game running on that, but who knows? I could talk here forever about what makes Dynasty Warriors 3 awesome, but we have a lot of other things to get to.
I'm actually just curious about
Yeah.
why. So I know when Dynasty Warriors Origins came out, there've been like friends of mine who've been playing the series from back then, because I got into it on, like, with Hyrule Warriors on 3DS and Samurai Warriors on PS4. So I have not played any of the older games. What is it specifically about that makes people either like 3, 4, or 5 the most? Like, what is it about those 3 games? If you can like just briefly tell me.
Just for three specifically, there's like a big large roster of characters that not all of them have unique move sets. Like out of like the 40 to 50 characters, like a good chunk of them are clones of other characters in terms of move sets. But they all have like very distinguishing like special attacks, and a lot of like the stage variety. There's like a lot of fun stage gimmicks. But I think the thing that really makes people appreciate Dynasty Warriors 3 is it's a pretty damn challenging game. Like a lot of people talk about like the archers in the game, that the archers will ruin your life in this game, especially if you're on the hardest difficulty trying to unlock people's ultimate weapons. They have a fun like elemental system with like some of like the later weapons that like interface and give status ailments to other from their strings. Um there's a cool bodyguard customizable system in it that you build up over time. There's just a lot, like it really expanded the scope of that series in a way that that kind of it builds off of two in a really elegant way. Like Dynasty Warriors 3 was my first Dynasty Warriors, so like I was just like blown away. But like it was like that real generation defining moment. Like man, video games are like this now. That was my moment with Dynasty Warriors 3. It's like fuck, video games are fucking awesome. So that was it really resonated with me in a way that like very few games have.
We kind of have a little section here. I know we're deep into the podcast, but we're going to touch just quickly on some Square Enix announcements. So Square Enix showed off a few things at TGS for some previously announced games, and we'll go into those, just at least through the headlines. But right before the podcast, you, Josh, spotted something specific to Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, which I know we've talked about a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but you saw some details, and I forget if it was social media or a newsletter or what, about things that are going to be changed. There you go. So
Yeah.
Dragon Quest VII, what did you glean from what you saw right before we started recording?
Yeah, so this was linked in our staff chat earlier today. There was an interview with Famitsu about Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, and it went over like stuff some of the stuff that has been cut. Like some of like the side stuff that was cut was like this casino in the game, and people are speculating maybe it's because of European laws that have changed, which maybe, but that really does suck though. Like the Dragon Quest casinos are usually fun. Immigrant Town is also has been removed from the game, that sucks. That was like a pretty cool part of the game, and the World Ranking Association. But the main things that were a big consequence to me of getting cut was the islands of Grondel, Providence, and Enciclo, and those had pretty like interesting stories to tell because like Grondel had like the Yggdrasil stuff, Providence had like the broken goddess statue, so plot line. Like I don't want to get into it here because we're so far in.
Yeah, so I saw you guys talking about like which stories were which. I'll be honest, when you say Grondel by itself, I'm like, I don't remember which one that is. When you say the one with the broken goddess statue, that one was a I thought you can just cut that.
That's the thing. I'm like, what the? I don't know what's going on, man. Grondal, sorry, not Grondel. Grondal.
Well, yeah, like I didn't remember what like the town was called, but I remember the story with the goddess statue.
Yeah, Providence is the one with the broken goddess statue.
Oh, Providence. It's just,
yeah.
That's
and then Grondal is the one with Yggdrasil.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tree.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a bummer.
Yes. So like I said, I don't want to get too cynical over this release of moving up there, but I really have to say it for myself. Like, do you really have to make up for what did you put in place here then that warranted them getting removed? Because those are pretty cool. Like that's all I'm thinking in my head. Like that's almost like a total of 7 islands removed from the get go already in that game. So I don't know what to say. People who know Dragon Quest VII, you'll understand. For people who don't know, it's fine if you don't know. It's okay. It's just kind of a big bummer.
We'll just be blissfully ignorant.
Yeah, that's like here. Adam here is like, wait a minute, they're adding that. They're cutting that one. What? Yeah. So that was some fun news to hear.
So the games that Square Enix showed off at TGS were the three that we already knew of: Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD Remake, Adventures of Elliot, The Millennium Tales, and Octopath Traveler 0. So a lot of these are kind of rehashing some information in slightly different contexts. I'm not saying it's identical, but a lot of, like, did you know Dragon Quest 2 has a fourth party member, the Princess of Canuck again, sort of thing. For Dragon Quest 1 and 2, the main thing that they showed off at TGS was a very extended look at this like underwater region and story, where like all of your characters like sink to the bottom of the ocean with like bubbles around them, and talking about how that will relate with, you know, the scrolls and the medallions. I've never played Dragon Quest 2, so sorry if I come off a little green on this. But basically just talking about that is a significant expansion of the original game's scope. A lot of it is, you know, going underwater and being sunken ships and going to ancient like treasure troves and talking to mermaids. So
if I remember correctly, in Dragon Quest 2, one of the sigils you just pick up on the world map in the ocean. You just go to a certain square and you just pick it up, and it's like, da 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 da, you picked it up. And it's like, oh, that's it. My guess is now...
I'm trying to remember that one. Like, oh yeah, okay, that's right.
I'm guessing that now they've added this whole underwater scenario. Like, okay, now you just don't pick up a sigil. Now there's a whole scenario involved. That's my guess.
Adding content instead of removing it. Interesting.
For Adventures of Elliot, The Millennium Tales, a lot of this was just a look at some extended gameplay. Now, I never played the demo, so I'm not sure how much of like the different weapons people got to play with in the demo, but it showcased a little bit of that. It showcased a little bit of the dungeon crawling with like the abilities that Elliot has with the fairy. So it was more of a tiny bit of an extended gameplay look. I don't know if there was really anything else more key that they showed off in that trailer. Octopath Traveler 0, I say the biggest thing from that was a little bit more of an extended look at the town building, UI and the shop UI and that sort of stuff. They did a little bit on the combat as well, but that was kind of already something that was covered previously. It was just a little bit more of everything for both of those two games, where Dragon Quest 1, 2 specifically keyed in on the underwater exploration. So all three of those, of course, are coming out in relatively short order. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 at the end of next month, and then Octopath Traveler 0 in December, and Elliot in... Do we have a date for Elliot?
I don't think so.
Not yet. 2026. So yeah, that was kind of the Square Enix block. So just kind of a little bit of a touch in on all those upcoming games. We got a lot of look in at the NetEase title from developer Naked Rain, Ananta. This is the one I saw Adam talking about this. This is the... I'm trying to describe this game in as few terms as possible. Sorry if this is gleaning to the Genshin GTA-like, Spider-Man 2-like in a lot of ways. So it was the one that was announced as Project Mugen and then eventually became Ananta. There was a gameplay trailer, and then there was like a demo of extended gameplay footage. The trailer I actually really enjoyed the vibes of. It really kind of gives you that it feels less like a Genshin like when I watch this trailer, even if it has a similar art style. It shows like, you know, third person shooter and driving in vehicles and just dancing in the street and just kind of like vibing in a city in like an urban setting. Like I've actually I didn't think this game was really for me, and I probably won't play it, but I really enjoyed just kind of watching the trailer, just kind of showing like the breadth of the sorts of things you can do in the game. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, even though like I wouldn't really call it like a Genshin at this point. Maybe like cell shaded visuals if people
Yeah,
start thinking
that's
like that.
you're right on that. Yeah.
But like when you think about like the combat system, it's like not really about switching of characters. Like the combat system feels a lot more grounded, more like something you'd see out of like Sleeping Dogs or GTA, where it's like a very brawler-esque, but they also have like the web slinging aspects like a Spider-Man. Like one of like people have already pointed this out on social media, but there's a lot of like animations in this game that like I wonder if they might be legally in trouble for, because there's some like one-to-one animations from like something like Spider-Man 2, like of the symbiote suit like takedowns. You see it in this game. You see some of the web slinging animations like getting off a web almost looks like what you'd see in the Insomniac Spider-Man games. There's even some with like one-to-one with Sleeping Dogs, for example. It's like, okay, you guys are hopefully you guys don't get in trouble for this because this looks really, really eerily similar to some of these other games in terms of like animation work and moves. It's in the Spider-Man comparison case. I guess the big news for this game, aside from all these gameplay showcases, like that gameplay trailer and demo video, is like they've already announced like through Famitsu, like there's gonna be no gacha for the characters, so people aren't rolling for the characters. It's also really funny because like when you're switching to a character in this game, it does that GTA 5 like zoom out of the world and then zoom back into the city to like where that that character is doing at that time, which is like GTA 5. But but they've been kind of unclear about how they're going to monetize this game because apparently the monetization, we don't know if there's a gacha system associated with this or not, but the monetization is going to be tied to more cosmetics like cars and clothing, for example. So yet to be confirmed of like exactly how they're going to monetize this game, but as of now, this is what they've shown off. And I do feel bad for like any older phones that are going to try to run this game like mine if I try to even if I even try to humor the prospect of running this game, because it might just light my phone on fire and explode it because there's a lot going on. So
when I was watching this, I didn't even think of it in the context like, oh yeah, this is a phone game. Obviously, also PS5 and PC, but yeah, mobile devices. Yeah, it looks fun.
It feels like every free to play game recently is mobile, PC, and PS5. Like those are the three platforms for like just about all the quote unquote big ones now. So yeah.
Oh, I'm watching some of the Spider-Man stuff, and I do see it. Like, that looks very similar. There's only so many ways to swing on a web, but yeah. Last section here from TGS specific. Well, maybe not the last section. Next section. Information about the Suikoden series. Of course, a lot of these projects we were already aware of back around the same time that all the remasters got kicked off. Suikoden Starleap, the upcoming mobile release, we got some information about that. I'm not sure what was all shown in this HQ Functions trailer. Obviously, very emblematic part of the Suikoden series is having the base that you tier up and progress through as you go through the game.
Yeah, they showed also like the mini games, like hey, there's fishing, there's mining, and like they showed some of the side activities of this game. For Adam, they showed off like, hey, Vicky's gonna be in this game. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna play it though, but it's cool. Everyone's favorite Suikoden girl, Vicky, is in there because she has one of the most useful functions in the entire series. But even somehow the bigger Suikoden announcements wasn't like what they showed off for the mobile game. Just like there's still no release date. They just showed off some more like characters and so forth. But there's other Suikoden projects in the verse. We already knew several of them, like the Suikoden anime, for example, still in the works. Is adapting Suikoden 2 into a TV anime. They're changing the official name of Suikoden 2's main character. People throughout the years have known him as Ryo. According to Konami, it has been decreed that his name is Riliu. 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 Adam, how does this make you feel that Suikoden 2's main character is officially Riliu?
My honest answer is I don't care. I've never really cared about canon names, so I don't care.
Will you call him Riliu now instead of Ryo when you're referring to Suikoden 2's MC name?
I don't know what you're talking about. The main character in both Suikoden 1 and Suikoden 2 is named Adam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that is a very Adam answer.
Also Suikoden 5 and 4. Not 3. Not 3 though. 3 is Hugo, Chris, and Gedo. They have their own names.
But other than that, it's all
okay, my point is that I usually name nameable protagonists after me.
Oh. But people are a lot of people in the RPG community are want quote unquote canon names when there's an option to fill in their name. Like, oh my god, I gotta name my guy, not me, has to be the canon name. Well, there you go. Everyone go start up Suikoden 2 right now and name Ryo to Riliu if you want to adhere to the new canon. There's also going to be a Suikoden stage play over in Japan that's adapting Suikoden 1, and the main character of that is not going to be Tyr, it's going to be Rian McDowell. Rean McDowell.
You thought we could escape Rian? We can't.
This one is like kind of a bit more like, whoa, okay, you're really changing the established name of this one. So people, historically referred to as Tier, now Rien. So that's the new reality we live in for Suikoden fans, as decreed by Konami gods. It's amusing but stupid, but it's like whatever, sure.
Couple other trailers coming out of TGS here as we get towards the end of the podcast. We got a new trailer for the new Onimusha game, Onimusha Way of the Sword. This is a relatively short trailer, but just showcasing the it's a story trailer mostly. But I have not played Onimusha, so I'm not the best person to talk to it. Anything to glean from here?
This largely like isolated for the other Onimusha games. Yeah, usually, I'm trying to think of like, have there been any of the mainlines linked like directly story related? Not really. This can stand on its own. You don't have to like look for this. Like, is it referencing any of the other ones? Nah, not really. Just we want a release date already and playable demo, public demo. It looks great. It looks great.
We have a new trailer for the delayed, previously delayed Inazuma 11 victory, Inazuma 11. I just fusion
It's
dance
fine.
those two titles.
I love it.
Inazuma 11 Victory Road it was going to release in August, moved back to November. They showed a gameplay trailer for that. I guess if I had to highlight anything from this trailer, is that the goalie calls forth a stand like from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to stop like a eject shot angel kick. So yeah, it's
the entire
grounded soccer
series.
RPG.
Yep.
So yep.
Yeah.
This is gonna be like that Captain Tsubasa game, but actually like really good to play. Hopefully.
Yeah. There's. We'll see. It's coming in a few months. Hopefully it's awesome. But yeah, just seeing PV8 on this reminds us like, man, this game has been on the road for a long time. So, yeah. Well, hopefully by November we'll have more to say. I definitely want to pick this up and play the shit out of it. But it's gonna be many.
Hopefully the reviewer for RPGsite.net has enough time with it.
Yeah,
Whoever it
hopefully,
is.
I'll be surprised if they do. I feel like if they got review code right now, it wouldn't be enough time. We'll see.
Yeah, it's like 300-hour campaign.
As part of Koei Tecmo's TGS stream, Kite was very good and diligent at watching like the 6-hour long stream. A few things there about Nioh 3 and a few other titles, but also the recently announced Atelier Ryza Secret Trilogy Deluxe Pack. We already kind of talked about how all 3 games are getting like new content, new characters, things like that. So during the stream, Kite put up the timestamps for what they showed is being added to each individual game. In Ryza 1, Romy and Agatha, and Ryza 2, Lila and Empel, and then Ryza 3, Seri and Clifford. So I've not played those games, but showcasing that all 3 are getting some additional content in the trilogy pack, and where those were shown off in Koei Tecmo's long TGS stream. This is a game I don't remember if we covered it before. It looks like it was first announced back in June. This is Paw Print Studios' title Aniimo, which is an online Pokemon. I was gonna say a Pokemon-like, or maybe it's a Pal World-like at this point. But this showed up at the Xbox stream, so I don't know if they're gonna be like the publishing partner for this. It seems like an interesting pick for them. But just a little 90-second trailer for Aniimo, which again is kind of like a very cuddly creature collector game.
It'll become too well known or successful, or else the big Nintendo might come after you. You know, don't say how fast you're selling or how many titles you've been selling so publicly every hour like Pal World, or else Nintendo might be like,
I think all the rest of the headlines here are mostly just some date announcements that kind of came out of TGS, or at least alongside TGS. The Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy is going to get a major update in November. I actually didn't see this headline before this podcast. I'm not sure what the update is.
Oh, they're actually like a soundtrack selector. So like on that a gallery mode. There's also gonna be like a story mode. Like if you just want to like see the story, but have like the game like play itself. They've
Basically, like the new collections,
Yeah.
the quality of life and accessibility and all the bonus content style features, bringing it back randomly to the original, which is good. Like, I also hope they probably won't happen, but if they actually bring it to the mobile version also, because I don't know if you remember, Ace Attorney Trilogy has had like 3 different mobile versions, and they keep delisting the old one and making you buy it again. So the new one, which is on iOS and Android, is based on this current PC version for $25, and I bought it again. So hopefully they patch it there also, because I think the PC and mobile versions are the best way to play this. So hopefully they don't leave that out, but we'll see.
They also adding 2 new languages with this update, with Latin American Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese. So you get to see protesto when you choose
That's pretty fun.
Brazilian Portuguese. Yeah.
A few other release dates here. The biggest one, I'll skip ahead just a tiny bit. Well, the biggest two. Code Vein 2 has a release date of January 30th, and alongside with a new trailer for that.
That's coming earlier than I expected. I never would have thought that'd be
Yeah.
like a late January release. I thought it'd be later on in 2026. Interesting.
Mhm.
They also showed off like a developer letter for Code Vein 2 that showed off the character creator near the end of it. People have always said that Code Vein is their favorite like character creator game that just so happens to have a Souls-like attached to it. Because a lot of people like really like the in-depth character creator of that game, and they have just like even more options of it, like fingernail color, for example. You could customize in this game, which is fun. I highly suggest checking out like that dev letter and like that character creator if you're interested in that. They're going even more all out with the character creator in this game. Crazy.
I do remember the original game being people sharing like their some, I forget if it was like a code or what, but you could share like created characters, and people were like doing all sorts of IP crossovers and things like that. And then the other big announcement was Nioh 3. We knew that they were going to show this. We were probably expecting a release date February 6th. We're all of a sudden saying a lot of January, February, March dates. And I guess here is a good time we can shout out that Adam has gone to work starting to create his 2026 RPG list. So if you use the RPG site RPG list for upcoming releases, there's a version 1.0 or 0.1, whatever Adam wants to call it, for 2026 up on the site. And the first 3 months are already got a few big hitters in there. The Nioh 3 date announcement trailer, it was pretty short, 80 seconds long, primarily about story and about an Oni shogun, a shogun that's tapping into the power of
It's based like
demonkind.
they're like different time periods of Japan, like throughout this title as well. So there's going to be like some time shenanigans you're doing in it.
They don't really touch on the gameplay at all, like the open world aspect of it at all. Like I'm still interested in seeing more of that, but yeah. Let's see. I guess I'll just go through the rest in order. We have 2 that are actually available now. Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven is now available on Xbox and Xbox Series. So excellent game. Now available on that system.
Xbox on
Here's
PC.
one.
Xbox Series and Xbox on PC would play and stuff. They
Yeah.
just said Xbox and Xbox Series. So I just wanted to make sure
okay.
that yeah, it's not Xbox One. I believe it's just Xbox and PC.
No, yeah. This is a game that to me it feels like a blast from the past, even if though it's like 2022. But Relayer, which originally released in 2022 and then later showed up on PC with Relayer Advanced, is now getting a definitive edition on Switch 2. Well, I say now is available. It came out 2 days ago at the time of recording. So Relayer is now available on Switch 2, and it's got like new. Let's see.
It has all like all the updates and all the DLC that came out for it, because like it got like actual like gameplay systems that came out after its like initial release, like the whole upgrading your mech booster system, whatever. Like that shit came out after I already completed the game, which is like okay, whatever. And then they had all DLC, so it's basically like there's nothing really like new in terms of like game content that's already been there in this definitive edition. It's like kind of just bundling it all up and then releasing it on Switch 2.
Basically, it was called Relay Advanced on Steam, and because it's I assume it's based on the Steam version with all the DLC. That's why it's called Relay Advanced Definitive Edition. So yeah, it is just the same. Like everyone who has the game on PS5 and bought the DLC, you're not missing out anything here. But I enjoyed the game, like despite its flaws on PS5, and I bought it on PC to support it. I might do it here because it's quite cheap. It's quite cheap. It's like $29 on sale till October 15th. So I'm curious to see how it plays on Switch. So probably Switch 2, sorry. It's not a Switch 1 game. Probably will buy it before the next episode of the podcast.
Yeah, really hope it gets a sequel. I'm still kind of bitter about how it treated its post game stuff. It's okay. Hopefully they make a sequel. It was enjoyable.
And then the last one, this is actually, I believe, the furthest date that we have for a game release. Crimson Desert is releasing on March 19th of next year. So that's
There
the
you go.
furthest date out we have. The game that is the everything game isn't an RPG, is Adam's gone through it a bunch of times. It's an open world, single player action game with RPG elements. I believe I have that all right.
Yeah.
where you have to press 18 buttons to lift a flagpole or something like that. But
Good that it finally got a
interesting.
release thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like how big of an audience there is for it, just because of its interesting. Because I don't want to just besmirch it before it comes out, like poison the well in that sense. It's just had an interesting, not just like, because games go through development issues, and some come out at the other end all the better for it, and some don't. But this is like almost like a communication issue. Like I don't think I've seen that to that extent in another game, where it's like, what is this game? Well, we're still deciding, but we're still going to market it, even though we don't know what it is yet. It's multiplayer, it's single player, it's just like, now that they finally decided, they finally going to put out what they've got. It'll be interesting to see like how well it came together in the end.
They have a $280 collector's edition for this game as well.
Excellent. Mikhail should request it.
If I'm requesting any collector's edition, I don't do that. But if I would, it would definitely be for Nioh 3. Because I think they're just doing it for Japan as usual. And this is Koei Tecmo published, not Sony. So yeah. But yeah, like if I had to like waste money on a collector's edition after I already did that for Trails in the Sky first chapter, which I've not had time to open yet. But yeah, like it would be for Nioh 3 or Code Vein. So yeah, Code Vein 2.
And that's it for TGS so far. We'll wrap up next week with anything that comes out like as we're recording or into the last part of the weekend. We're not sure if we're expecting any big things, but also we'll get James back in, who obviously attended TGS, so we'll get the direct feedback about the event, what he saw, everything next week, both on the podcast as well as I'm sure he's got plans for features that he's putting up on the site. But even this week, like we said at the beginning of the podcast, tons of features up on the site, 4 reviews, an interview, a preview, a bunch of hardware features from Mikhail, and then even the updated RPG 2026 release date list is up on the site as well. All the news out of TGS is up there. You can find RPG Site on all the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site. You should be able to find us. Join the Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. If you listen to those podcasts, leave us a like, leave us a rating. We'd like to see those. Next week we'll be talking about TGS and maybe about Digimon. I think that's on the docket for a release coming up soon.
Next Friday I believe it's releasing, so we'll probably definitely talk about it.
There we go, Digimon next week. Book it. Until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care. Talk to y'all later.
As they say,
Get to
Digimon
Kronos.
are the champions.
Digimon.